Volume 3. A General's Melancholy. Prologue. The promising rookie of the Royal Chivalric Order, Astrid Gale, was on his way to the royal villa, the residence of Sommervesel's first princess, Letitia Elkreutzer. This place was usually peaceful and tranquil, but it had been noisy and busy as of late. Astrid was well aware of the reason why the normally serene household was in a bustle of activities. The villa's mistress, Letty, had decided to move out and transfer to one of the wings of the royal palace. Oh. This is a rare occurrence. You did not enter through the window. Are you, perhaps, sick? Or did you finally learn your lesson after the countless times Ainui reprimanded you? Ahahaha, laughed Leonhardt, third prince of Sommervesel and Letty's full younger brother, as he saw Astrid standing by the villa's entrance. His greeting was overflowing with the prince's odd and eccentric personality. The young knight bowed down to greet the prince and took out a letter from his chest pocket. Professor, one of my former classmates asked me to deliver this to you. Oh, I see. Thank you for the trouble, thanked Leonhardt as he took the letter, but continued on looking at Astrid. So I can now safely say that you enter through the front door when you are to see me, but you go through the window when you're meeting my sister. That's interesting. Though both Leonhardt and Astrid are young lads of 16 years, Leonhardt is a brilliant historian and holds a teaching position in the Knight Academy. Astrid was one of his students in the academy, and even though Astrid had graduated, their relationship of being a teacher and a student remains. I would have invited you inside so you could greet Ainui, but I'm afraid she is quite busy with the preparations for her travel to Ilstra. This will be her first state visit as the crown princess, though she could easily get through with it with her smile. She will only be attending a wedding. Duke Senpai would be coming with her as well, am I correct? He said so yesterday. But I do not understand why do they have to pass by Northruth just to go to Ilstra. Isn't it odd to do that? Duke Barchet was Astrid's senior and the knight of the first seed of Letty's future Knights of the Round. He told Astrid in one of their conversations that he was looking forward to going to Northruth again, for he was not able to visit there for some time. Astrid found it strange that they were specifically choosing the longer path when they could have gone straight to Ilstra. His professor provided him an answer. Taking the straight line does not necessarily mean it is the fastest route in the real world, little Astrid. The roads going to Northruth are well maintained, so it will be faster for the horses to pass there. Ah, I understand now. But I climbed over the mountains and it was faster. Now, little Astrid, better add some details to your story, like when and why you were there before your senior, standing behind us, asks you for those. Just say you went out there for a picnic with your family. Leonhardt already had an inkling as to Astrid's previous occupation before he entered the Knight Academy and decided to give the quite innocent knight some advice. Yes sir, was the overly enthusiastic reply Astrid gave to Leonhardt before turning around to face his scowling senior, Duke. Message from the order? Duke nonchalantly asked Astrid as he decided to turn a deaf ear on the conversation he heard a while ago. No, sir. I was just asked by a friend to deliver something. Ah, yes, confirmed Leonhardt. He did deliver to me a letter from one of my former students. Do not you find it thoughtful? They asking about my health even after graduating? I think this is a good proof that I am a good teacher. Putting aside the good teacher part, I think, as a Knight of the Order, I have a right to check that letter in case it contains some top-secret information that should not be disclosed to anyone. There had been rumors about the young prince phishing information from the Order's network through his former students. Duke thought this might be a good time to verify the rumor, but the prince only gave him a vague smile. We have quite a lively party here, greeted Letty as she came out from the corridor together with her maid. Oh, Astrid? Why are you here? I had some business with Professor, Your Highness. But I have finished it already. I see, coolly replied Letty, quite a contrast with the energetic reply and sparkling eyes Astrid gave her. Anyone who saw their exchange might have found it endearing, but not the two other men who were truly not amused by the sight. Seeing there was nothing left for her to do, Letty turned around to go back inside when she suddenly stopped, remembering something. This may actually be a good timing. Astrid? I have something to say to you. Do you have the time? Of course, Your Highness, eagerly replied Astrid and followed Letty with a certain lightness in his steps. Duke and Leonhardt, however, felt more displeased than ever as they followed the hop-skipping Astrid with their annoyed gazes. Letty dismissed the servants around but did not went inside the room. She had no plans of being in a close room with a previous offender. I remember you told me that your dream was to become a knight. Have you realized this dream already? Not yet, Your Highness. Astrid works as a knight in the Royal Chivalric Order. No matter where you look at it, he was a knight. But his dream was different. I had only became a knight in the order, but I want to be a knight swearing my loyalty to use my sword to protect the king, the country, and her people. Astrid answered Letty with pure honesty and passion. He did not want to be a knight wishing to gain honor or prestige, nor did he want to be bound by blood and duty. He wanted to be a knight in the truest sense of the word. He wanted to serve and protect. This was not the first time Letty heard Astrid's absurdly ideal dream, and yet, she still could not find it foolish. She found it admirable, and the smile she gave Astrid showed it. I have not heard that answer while now. You also said before that you have decided on who you wanted to be as your master. How is your progress? Do they find you a desirable knight? To be honest, I'm having a hard time. That person is not looking for strength in a knight. I think with my current state, I am beneath their notice. Maybe you could consider this other path I thought of. Letty wanted to discuss about Astrid's future, and she happened to have thought of a possible path for him. I think fulfilling your dream by becoming an honorary knight will be difficult. This occupation has become nothing but a shell of what it should be. Now, swearing your loyalty to a master simply means following their personal orders, and this can come into conflict with your own set of morals. However, I think there is another way for you to fulfill your dream. Letty understood how difficult it is to make one's dream a reality. But she might have found one way for Astrid to realize his dream. Aim to be the commander of the Royal Chivalric Order. Show everyone how to be a true knight by standing above them all. Doing this means you can be the true knight every time. This is exactly what your dream is. The commander? Yes. But your feelings should still take the priority. But do remember that reality is harsh on dreams. Consider your options carefully. Should you wish to follow my suggestion, you can expect full support from me, especially if you would encounter problems due to your origins. Astrid listened to Letty intently, but he did not give her an affirmation, but asked her an impertinent question. Did your dream not come true, Your Highness? Astrid occasionally lets his true nature come out, and this is one of those unexpected moments. Letty was surprised, though not offended, at Astrid's question. She was momentarily rendered speechless, but soon found her voice. No, it did not. But then I realized I would be a queen, and it no longer mattered. I see, Astrid replied and excused himself. Astrid was walking out of Letty's residence as he contemplated on Letty's words and about his future. He could not point out exactly what was wrong, but he did not seem to be settled on his own future, and this frustrated him. He let out an inward groan. Hey Astrid. I see you're still a stray dog as usual, huh? The sarcastic greeting came from Friedhelm, the first prince of Sommervessel. Astrid felt the prince's presence even before he called to him but decided to ignore him. But he could no longer do that now since Friedhelm was the one who approached him. Though after some consideration, he thought that this might be a good chance to ask someone else's opinion on the matter of dreams. Your Highness, may I know what was your dream when you were young? I still cannot say whether you're just a natural airhead, or you do this on purpose, commented Friedhelm on Astrid's blatant disregard of his stray dog comment. He was still contemplating if Astrid was someone whom he should be on his guard, but decided to give him an answer. My dream was, naturally, to be a king, Friedhelm said with a flair. But how come something naturally could be a dream? I wouldn't have considered my family business my dream. You're astute in the wrong places, you know? Becoming a king for Friedhelm is like becoming an adult. It was a path prepared for him and not exactly his dream. It was like becoming an assassin for Astrid. Then, let me tell you what my dream is. It's probably the same as Duke's. A particular someone also told me before that it was his dream. I guess it's safe to say that my dream is also the dream of all boys in this country. What dream? Friedhelm knew that Astrid did not grow up in Sommervessel, so he chose to phrase his answer that way. If it's the same as Senpai's dream, then is it to become Her Highness Knight? Quite correct, but not exactly the right answer. Astrid asked Friedhelm because he wanted to use his answer as a reference to clear his own confused mind, but instead of providing him with a straightforward answer, Friedhelm even added a riddle for him to solve. The young knight let out a sigh as he realized that thinking was a difficult business. Chapter 1. Something borrowed. The wedding of the third prince of Ilstra, Prince Severio, and the daughter of a duke in Sommervessel, Lady Charlotte, was fast approaching. Their story began when Prince Severio fell in love at first sight to Lady Charlotte during one of his visits to Sommervessel. Charlotte was Letty's cousin. She was all a sweet princess in a fairy tale ought to be, both in looks and in disposition. She had golden locks, mysterious amethyst eyes, an innocent face, and her words were often dreamy. The softness of her features and gentler personality sometimes made her look younger than Letty, who has more of a sophisticated beauty. Charlotte was in fact 3 years older. Now, Letty was tasked to be the representative of Sommervessel's royal family to attend the wedding of her cousin. This was, as her father the king had said, to be her first state visit as crown princess and heir to the throne. However, it was rather obvious to everyone that this was not a regular state visit involving difficult discussions and meetings. Instead of being expected to bring home favorable results from meetings and conferences, Letty was only expected to bring home experience on how to conduct herself when in a different country. However, for Letty, this all felt unnecessary. She had already attended these kinds of occasions countless times as a princess. But then again, I have acted as the perfect princess since forever. Naturally, father would not know me in any other way. All she could do was repress a sigh. Letty was known to be the epitome of a gentle princess. She loved the arts and literature. Her loving heart was torn due to the brewing strife between her older brothers, but she was firm enough to offer rebuke when needed. She never asserted herself to participate in political or military affairs, but was active in her causes for education and medical welfare, all because of her kind heart. I did what I could to gain the citizens' support without me being a threat to the families of the 3 Grand Marquises. But with the current situation, I think I should have at least involved myself a little bit more in other things. Letty was on her way back to the royal villa after taking leave from her father for her scheduled travel to Ilstra. She was in a hurry, with her quick but silent steps telltale sign of her impeccable manners as a lady. She was stopped by someone greeting her. "You seem to be quite busy, Your Highness." "Ah, good day to you, Johannes," greeted back Letty. "I am bound to Ilstra for a state visit. This trip is supposed to teach me how to keep a straight face in public," she said with a shrug. Johannes Muller, the commander of the Royal Chivalric Order, was Letty's old friend, thus, she did not have to keep her act of being a sheltered princess. "I heard that your schedule for this trip is interesting." "That schedule is for my second, which you have given your approval for me to take him. To be honest, I do not have the leisure to be attending weddings." Letty previously spoke with Johannes regarding about her plan for her second night for her Knights of the Round. When he heard her choice, he could not help but give the princess a wry smile and comment about her penchant for going into difficult battles. "Please forgive my presumptuousness, Your Highness, but let me give you an advice regarding that conquest. It shall not be the traditional subtraction, but addition." "Whatever do you mean?" "I'm sorry, but I cannot say anything further. Please just consider this a simple advice." "Is that so?" Johannes would never impart something meaningless. This would definitely be useful in the near future, so Letty did not press him for further details. "To be honest, Your Highness, I am not even allowed to share that small piece of advice, but I feel a bit sorry for Your Highness because, for this case, you are being used as an excuse for the real objective." "I did have a hard time in doing the convincing." "Real objective? I as an excuse?" Johannes did not say anything else and simply smiled silently. He probably had no plans on elaborating his statement. "On a different topic though, Your Highness, would you mind me asking if you had any childhood dreams?" "I don't mind the question." "Yes, I did have one." "What about it?" "I was wondering what it would feel like if that certain dream comes true now." Johannes paused, trying to think about his own question, but gave up on the thought as soon as he started. "I think I have grown old already and age has hardened my imagination. I could not even think how it would feel." With that, the commander stood straighter, squared his shoulders, and bowed his head. "I pray for your safe journey and await for your return. Please excuse me, Your Highness." Part 2. The Night King's room, the story of the gods embroidered in gold on the carpet lining the floor, framed with ears of grain. The ceiling was adorned with an intricate wooden chandelier. At the center of the floor rested a patina table made from a massive evergreen oak surrounded by chairs made of the same material with complicated yet beautiful carvings. Letty had visited this timeless room in her dreams on the night before she left for Ilstra. This was where the consciousness of the reincarnations of the Night King Christian, Somavessel's first king, congregates. On this visit, Letty remembered the question Johannes asked her, and decided to ask the other reincarnations the same question. "Childhood dream?" "To conquer the world, of course. And I'm doing just that." "That was stupid of me to ask you. I should have expected that you would give such an outrageous answer." Letty said this with a shake of her head. The answer the Lion King Alexander gave, though outrageous, seemed more ridiculous because he was truly doing that. He was able to conquer half of the continent during his reign and never lost a battle. In a sense, he was more like an emperor with several kingdoms than a king of a single kingdom. "How about you, King Karlheinz?" "Well, it was to be a good king." "Please excuse my dull answer." "No, I find it beautiful," commented Letty. As opposed to the aggressive conqueror Alexander, the administrative King Karlheinz focused on the internal affairs of the kingdom and never waged war on other nations. He was always a certain candidate in any debates among historians on who is the best ruler of Somavessel. "How about you, King Oswald?" I'd be happy to just live peacefully in my archduchy." "It's my turn. I wanted to be a painter." Heartbroken King Ludger sensed the impending gloom to take over the room due to one-armed King Oswald's answer, so he chose to intervene. "A painter? I would like to see some of your masterpieces." "Then it's too bad that I am in Queen Letitia's future. But you know, when I asked the kings after me, they told me that my paintings were worth a fortune only because I, the heartbroken king, drew it. And I thought I was good." And taking a look at Alexander, the youngest of the kings continued sharing his painting legacy. "I also did your portrait, old man. Consider that as a gift because your portrait in the long gallery did not look like you at all. I tried to be as truthful as possible. But then again, don't you think that portrait did capture all of his features?" Everyone nodded in agreement. Everyone in the room, except for Alexander, knows about the particular portrait. He was drawn to be too vicious and almost cruel looking, and only the reincarnations of the Night King truly know how he looked like. How about your dream queen Letitia? Mine? It was. And her answer was even more outlandish than Alexander's. Part 3. What shall we do now? Letitia was on the road to Ilstra. Her traveling party was consisted of 15 people, Duke, her knight, 2 ladies' maids she borrowed from her mother's family, and some other guards and servants. The heavens had favored their trip with good weather for the past 5 days. Their journey was going on smoothly until today, on their 6th day of travel. I beg your pardon, Your Highness. It seems that the wine served at dinner last night was spoiled. A wine with certain herbs and spices infused in it was served last night during dinner. It was considered a local delicacy in the area, and nearly everyone in her traveling party partook in it. However, the wine was spoiled and it upset the stomach of everyone who drank it. There were only 2 people who were not affected because they did not took even a sip of the spoiled wine, Letty, who did not want to drink cheap wine, and Duke, who had a personal oath of never drinking when in duty. Your Highness, let's dispatch a messenger to the nearest camp of the order and ask for assistance. We cannot reach Ilstra at this rate. Yes, I agree. It would at least take 10 days for us to return to the capital and reassemble a new traveling party. We will not make it on time for the wedding. If it were only up to Letty, she would go to Ilstra on horseback with Duke alone. However, that could not be since she still had to keep appearances for the sake of the country's reputation. A princess needs guards for protection and maids for her care. Traveling alone with her knight was unheard of. Without any other option left, they requested the inn's messenger to deliver their call of help to the nearest camp. They decided to wait until noon for their reply before considering a different plan. As they wait, Letty busied herself in taking care of her maids who kept on apologizing for being sick. But the kind-hearted princess would have none of it and told them to worry about themselves first. But these symptoms are quite strange for an ailment caused by a spoiled wine. Spoiled wine causes the unknowing victim to have cold sweat and stomach pain. There should be no fever or vomiting involved, but these were the most prominent symptoms shown by her companions. Based on her knowledge, these symptoms might actually be due to a different cause. Some vessel have this native fruit called katsa and it could inflict a serious case of upset stomach when ingested while unripe. The fruit is so common that even children know about this. If their illness was truly caused by katsa, then their lives were not in danger. They would feel sick for 2 to 3 days, but they would be well afterwards. One option for Letty was to wait for them to get well. However, she could not make her decision based on this assumption alone. She was no doctor and her diagnosis was only nothing but an informed guess. However, if this incident was truly caused by ingesting unripe katsa, then she could safely conclude that this was not an accident. Someone has orchestrated this. But who? A knock broke Letty's thoughts. Your Highness, support from the Melville camp has arrived. Letty stood up and opened the door herself to let Duke into the room. This task was not normally done by princesses, but without her servants, she had to do things on her own. Support? But I think Melville's camp leader does not have enough authority to dispatch his men. We would still have to bring them with us to the camp in the borders to gain permission. This will cost us twice the trouble. About that, a high-ranking officer answered our call. Duke opened the door to the room where the knights of the order were asked to wait, and in front of them stood their leader, the high-ranking officer. What is he doing here? Letty was utterly surprised to see him, but her expression betrayed none of her surprise and kept it impassive. He was in mid-40s in age, had chestnut hair and sharp hazel eyes. One of the famous descriptions used for this man was that dignity and nobility was his uniform. I am honored to meet you, Your Highness. I am, started the man. There is no need for introductions. Letty stopped his introduction and looked at him with a smile befitting a princess. I know who you are, Vice Commander Craig Bard. And as if to prove her point, she continued on. You volunteered yourself to take on the responsibility of protecting our country in the front lines in the borders. You have never returned to the capital ever since then, and this have garnered you your alias, the Border General. It has been quite some time since I have met you. Letty mentioned that they have met before, but Craig could not point out exactly when they met. Letty wanted to keep her dominance in their conversation, and one technique to do that was do not give time for the other person to think, or maybe ask a question they did not have to think for the answer. She chose the former, and continued. I saw you from afar once when I was 8, and I asked father for your name. I understand that you would not remember our first meeting. I am glad to meet you personally. Letty's words and demeanor were all gentle, as what a princess should be. However, Duke and the other knights Craig brought him turned tense and uncomfortable the moment Letty mentioned father, which meant the present king of Somavessel, a topic that should never be brought up in Craig's presence. It is an honor for your highness to remember my name, bowed Craig, showing no signs of discomposure or anger. We have heard from the messenger what happened. May I ask what your plans are now? Letty also showed no lapse in her civility and asked Craig to take a sit before answering his question. Craig, being true to the rumors of being serious to a fault, declined the offer and continued standing. Letty did not press him, now knowing that this veteran knight was under the same class as Duke's seriousness to duty, and instead asked her own question. "Can I ask you first a question?" she asked, but did not wait for him to reply. "The Melville camp is the one closest to this location, but that is not where you and the border guards are assigned, is it not?" Letty simply mentioned a fact, and yet all of the knights, except Duke, were surprised at her knowing such a thing. For them, Letty was just a princess, a sheltered one, who did not have any business to know about the Order's organization. "Yes, Your Highness. I am indeed assigned to the border camp, and I was at Melville for a meeting on the joint exercises we were planning with them. When the messenger arrived and aptly reported to us the situation, I judged it'd be better for me to go and answer the call." "I see we were fortunate then," she nodded, fully satisfied with his answer, but this just made her think. This is too good to be true, and luck was never at my side. She was wary about this, but a good situation is still a good situation. She was no fool to let this chance go and not use it for her benefit. "As you have already heard, everyone in my travel party, save for me and my knight, Duke Barchet, are all sick due to upset stomach. We do not have the time to go back to the capital to reassemble a new party bound for Ilstra. The schedule for this trip did not have much allowance." Letty said all of these as she was seated and looking up at Craig, but her tone made her sound condescending. "Lend me some of your men, and we shall resume our journey. Without a lady's maid for your assistance, Your Highness? I can handle most on my own, and should I require any assistance, my knight shall be enough for the task." Letty was not pretending. This was all plain truth. She may look like the helpless princess who cannot do anything on her own, but she was not. In fact, she was Hoyden princess who dresses herself whenever she escapes out of the castle to roam around town. "Are you truly fine that?" "Yes, but," Letty paused, and with an authoritative voice no one could defy, gave her order to Craig. "You shall come with us in this journey." Craig was caught unprepared by this, and the subtle change in his expression did not go unnoticed by Letty. "But I have responsibility to protect our borders." "Which you were able to leave for a conference in Melville. This only means that there is no particular tension nor imminent threats at the moment, is it not?" Letty continued to press her suit. "And I know that even though you have never returned to the capital, you are still aware of the things going on there. Therefore, you know where I currently stand." Letty was the princess who happened to pick up the crown that was left by her two excellent brothers, thus the nickname Leftover Princess. Craig knew that she was standing on thin ice, made even thinner by the constant threats to her life due to the supporters of her two older brothers. "I take great caution in choosing the people I place by my side. However, due to this emergency, I do not have the time to check the backgrounds of each of the knights we will have in my party. Do not you think that having a knight that is under the faction of any of my brothers is like asking for my own death? I assure you that all of the men I have chosen are the most trustworthy. And I am saying that you are that most trustworthy knight for me, the border general who has kept his distance from the royal family for the longest time. You may not be my ally, but you are also definitely not my enemy. I am certain that you would not cause me any harm." Her words relayed that she knew, not only Craig's name, but also the real reason behind it. After a few moments of silence, Craig bowed and acquiesced to Letty's order. "I shall leave the responsibility of selecting the other members for the party. I highly esteem your abilities, and you have my trust." To talk of trust and esteem upon their first conversation might seem excessive and unbelievable for polite praises, and it was too dramatic to be considered as an honest opinion. "It is an honor, Your Highness," Craig modestly accepted. "Please excuse us to make the necessary preparations." He signaled the knights behind him and went out of the room. Silence returned and only Letty and Duke were left inside the room. "Pour me a cup of tea." "You can do that much, right? Don't complain if it tastes bad." Letty, true to her word, already had her knight working as a lady's maid. Duke begrudgingly obeyed his master and asked for tea from the inn staff. He poured Letty a cup when the staff came back with a fresh pot of tea. Letty accepted the cup, took a sip and said, "Tolerable. It is not undrinkable." After taking another sip, she silently placed the cup back to the saucer. She looked at Duke standing by the refreshment table. She put a finger on her lips, telling Duke to be silent and take the seat on the sofa next to her. Duke did as he was told and sat on the sofa with enough distance between them. Letty, however, closed in the gap and whispered in his ear. "Lower your voice. There is someone listening by the door." "Were any of the knights Craig brought in a supporter of your brothers?" "No, Craig chose the neutrals. If I were to make a guess, the one listening by the door is under what I would call the Craig faction not." "Craig faction? I shall let you know when I am more certain. For now, be on your guard and be careful of the things you say. If you notice something strange, let me know immediately, but remember not to alert anyone when you do." Letty was about to go back to her original seat upon finishing what she wanted to say, but Duke grabbed her shoulders and made her stay where she were. "I understand about the Craig faction. Just one more thing. You are aware of that incident with the vice commander, right?" "What incident?" "Don't act innocent. You knew about his alias, so you should also know that it is taboo to bring up the topic of His Majesty in his presence. Duke pointed out that one moment in Letty and Craig's conversation when everyone else in the room turned cold. Letty recognized what he was pertaining to but did not concur to what her knight had said. I am the princess and he is the vice-commander of the Royal Chivalric Army. Now, tell me, who has higher rank? Your Highness, Princess Letitia. Yes. So why should I be the one to be careful about my words with him? If you could give me one acceptable reason, I will concede to your point. To trace the origin of Craig Bard's alias, the Border General, one must go back 20 years in the past to know the story. Craig was the second son of an earl. Being the second son meant he had to find his own path in life. As a start, he entered the Knight Academy, excelled, and graduated with the highest honors. After that, he joined the Royal Chivalric Order, by his own merits became a distinguished knight, and went up the ranks. Craig Bard was a dignified man of noble birth, a persona of honor and clean reputation. He was trusted by many and a skilled swordsman. Many wanted and invited him to be their own knight. One of them was Letty's father, who was crown prince that time. He accepted the offer, knowing how great of an honor it was to be one of the future knights of the round. From then on, he swore his loyalty to the future king. However, soon after that, a war broke out between Somavessel and the neighboring Kilf Empire. Father was appointed as the commander-in-chief for that war. His strategy was to gather all troops and wage an all-out attack against Kilf. He wanted to use our advantage of having larger force to its fullest, but this also meant the sacrifice of a platoon stationed at small village in the border. This strategy worked and brought us the victory in that war, and an armistice between Somavessel and Kilf was signed after in Northruth. Vice Commander, however, was strongly against that operation. He questioned His Majesty if he was truly willing to let his men and the people in that village perish at the hands of the enemy. Yes. But to divide our troops and send them in waves to the battle is the worst tactic to be applied in this case. It is like telling them to go and kill themselves. Father's strategy was the best they had. The all-out attack overwhelmed Kilf and forced them to retreat and admit defeat, and we were able to acquire the advantageous position with the Armistice Treaty. But a few years after the treaty was signed, Kilf Empire went under siege of a civil war, and the emperor who signed the treaty was ousted by his enemies, and consequently nullifying the treaty with Somavessel. So the young Craig Bard, furious at the abandonment of the soldiers and citizens in that small village, resigned from being Father's knight. He requested to be assigned at the borders, the most unstable camp in the whole country. And of course, everyone deemed him as the noble knight who loved his country above all else. After dealing with numerous missions and battles at the turbulent country borders, Craig gained immense experience and knowledge. This made him the most likely candidate to be the next commander of the Royal Chivalric Order. But Craig refused the position simply because he would have to return to the capital, and therefore, he would have to face the king whom he no longer wanted to see. Thus, Craig remained at the borders, and for better or for worse, Johannes took the position. Johannes used to work under Craig's command during the war. And no matter what ceremonies or events were held in the capital, he never ordered Craig to come, probably in consideration for his former commanding officer. Can you not understand Vice Commander's rage, Your Highness? I can. But I also understand where the king stands. That is all. Young Craig's anger was just. But so was the king's decision as well. And Letty did not have any intention of reconciling them. Johannes has been working hard. If not for his advice, I would have only thought this incident to be pure good luck. Letty remembered the two things Johannes had told her before she left for Ilstra. It will be addition of points and not subtraction, and Your Highness is being used as an excuse, just a means to a goal. Letty now understood what these meant. But isn't this good luck to have the vice commander come with us, wondered Duke. I do not have good luck, my bad luck is good, commented Letty, and then murmured to herself, well, if this will be addition, I have to change some of my approach. Thinking as to how many points she got in the meeting earlier, Letty stood up and declared in a clear, loud voice, I shall leave you to oversee everyone's preparation. I will go and see how my maids are faring. She took the teacup quietly and loudly placed it back to the saucer to create the illusion that she just finished drinking her tea. This would lead the eavesdropper outside that she simply had tea, and that she had a secret conversation with Duke would not even cross his mind. Part 4. King Ledger was the only one present in the Night King's room. The king, also known as the Heartbroken King, would only come here whenever he had experienced a heartbreak. He wearily looked at the new visitor of the room. Ah. The balm of my soul has arrived, but wait, she looks rather annoyed. May I know what is the matter, Queen Letitia? I am on my way for a state visit, but everything will not cooperate. It is an endless cycle of planning and planning again. Nothing goes as planned. Oh, please remember to take a break. What is the agenda of the visit? Are you to sign a treaty? Or maybe the peace talks are still ongoing? No, the visit itself is just to attend a wedding. All I have to do is smile to accomplish this. Ledger dejectedly hung his head. Wedding was a sensitive topic for him. It was like having salt rubbed onto his fresh wounds. How nice. I want to be happy too. Ledger became a king sometime after Letty. During his time, the royal family of Somavessel was already at the end of their line, and to keep it alive, they have decided to call on then Prince Ledger, second prince of Napania, to be a prince consort. Napania's current royal family have traces of Somavessel's blood because the daughter of King Oswald happened to marry into the family. This was why they looked into Napania for a possible prince consort. So Ledger was still descended from the Somavessel royal family, albeit a bit far. Ledger gained access to the throne through his marriage to the crown princess. All was going well, or so they thought, because he experienced his first heartbreak on his wedding night. His new wife left a note in their bedchamber right after their wedding saying that she was eloping with her lover. This left Ledger in daze for days. Or so Letty has heard from some of the later kings who seldom visit the Night King's room. You are from a different nation, if I remember correctly. Had Somavessel's people ever tried to test your worthiness as the king? They might have had plans. But after my bride ran away from me, they all pitied pathetic me. Ledger felt crying upon remembering what happened to him. He covered his face to wipe invisible tears and let out one heavy sigh. But I never needed their pity, because I could have done the job just as well without it. Though probably not as well as you did, Queen Letitia. If they knew that I could, then I should not even have to take this troublesome test, questioning my abilities. Was there a brave retainer who dared test the Queen Letitia? I can't seem to remember any, but I cannot be sure with my scant knowledge of Somavessel's history right now. Since Ledger was from Napania, he was still in the middle of studying things about Somavessel like her history and customs. His exclamations of wonder upon hearing past events here in the Night King's room was quite a common thing to be heard here. The one testing me is not a retainer, but my own father. I cannot think of anyone else who would do it, and if he is truly the one who is doing so, many of the puzzle pieces will fall into place. Your father? Ledger was bewildered at Letty's answer. Weren't fathers normally supporters and not enemies? I think he wants to gauge if I truly have potential to be a ruler using this trip to Ilstra. He was the one who assigned me this task in the first place. And he wanted that man to be my judge. He is certain he would be fair and impartial in his assessment despite his severe opinion against the royal family. But her father and Craig had been estranged for a long time. Someone had to act as a mediator, and that role was performed by Johannes. This explains why he had said he was so overworked lately. But to use my test as an excuse, huh? Her father was searching for a path of reconciliation with Craig. To make that necessary first step, he used Letty's test for the opening of the path he needed. He wanted to reach out to Craig, and Johannes cooperated to fulfill His Majesty's request. And now, Craig wants to see how far the sheltered princess can go without any assistance. He probably even thought that Letty would wish to return to the capital first since she lost her maids because he only knew her as the leftover princess. But I think you, Queen Letitia, can actually bring down a country single-handedly, you know? For Ledger, this young woman in front him was the world's most amazing woman. Ledger's matter-of-factly statement of his praise somehow calmed Letty's nerves. I think you are exaggerating, but I thank you all the same. Thank you, King Ledger, and with a newfound determination, she said, they can test me all they want. I will take each one head-on, and finish it with the highest score ever. They shall have nothing else left to say, other than admit that I am truly fit to the Queen. Part 5. The morning sun woke up Letty. She slowly got, blinking away the remnants of sleep. She looked at the sun's rays peeking through her window. And suddenly she was wide awake. My maids are still supposed to be down with their sickness. Who drew back the curtains? Someone had snuck inside her locked room. She looked around to search any traces left of the intruder. Then a sudden attack of lethargy took her. She saw one black hand holding up the curtains. Didn't I tell you not to go out without my knowledge? Or are you doing that because you want Astrid to purify you? This was the same black hand that caused a horrifying incident in the royal castle, horrifying enough to be written as one of the horror stories of the place. After the black hand case was solved, Letty at first thought of purifying the black hand to eradicate it. However, she realized it might become handy in the future and decided to seal it inside her shadow. But her new pet was yet to be trained completely on how Letty liked things, and it sometimes does things that displeases the master, just like what it did this morning. Letty tapped away the black hand, which sulkily returned to her shadow. The curtain lost the force holding, and this made the room dark once again. Now then, the princess shall prepare for her day on her own, declared Letty as she drew back the curtains herself. After putting on her dress, Letty sat in front of the vanity contemplating on what to do with her hair. Though she is perfectly capable of brushing her own hair, and even doing a simple style that would fit for a daughter of a poor baron, tying a ribbon at the back with a style fit for a princess was quite a challenge. I guess I should just let it down then. Besides, she would only be seen by her guards, men who would not even spare the effort for hair care, surely would not mind the lack of ribbon adorning her hair. Convinced of the futility to arrange her hair on her own, she stood up from the vanity, thinking that she could just borrow a lady's maid from her cousin upon arriving at Ilstra. Your Highness, may I come in? You may. I have just finished dressing. Duke looked at Letty's appearance upon entering the room. Even before he could say anything, Letty sarcastically voiced out what she thought her knight thought. Yes, I am perfectly able to dress myself, thank you. If the dress was too complicated to wear, I would just ask one of the inn's maid to assist me. That was not I was about to say. How about your hair? That is too much to expect already. Besides, I will only be staying inside the carriage. I think it's fine to let it down. Duke happened to be quite observant. And she was thinking that men would not even notice the color of the ribbon she wears in her head. Shall I do it for you? What do you mean? I mean, shall I tie your hair? But don't expect much. I haven't tied a ribbon in a while. Duke pointed to the vanity, asking her to sit down. Letty, unconvinced, suspiciously took her seat. Do you really possess such skill? Like I said, don't expect me to do those elaborate styles your maid does. Duke picked up her hair and smoothed it first with the comb. Letty watched carefully as he worked on her hair and was surprised with the adeptness he showed for the occupation. Where did you learn to do this? Younger brothers happened to be born slaves to older sisters. When we were younger, my previously sword-loving sister, who asked me every day to be her sparring partner, suddenly thought she was a lady and ordered me to be her personal lady's maid. She made me tie ribbons and do braids every day. Someone else might have extended sympathies to the sad plights of the younger brother. But Letty was an older sister herself. She smiled and commented that it probably was the same for all families. I perfectly understand how your sister feels. I used to play the same game. But since I am a princess, I used to play the role of the lady's maid. And that is a luxurious game in itself. You do realize that, right? Letty's game was not to be the princess to served and waited. No, it was for her to be the one to do the service, which would have not been possible if she was not a princess herself. It was a game only real princesses could have played. Anyway, to do that, it meant I needed someone to be my princess. Who do you think played that role? Princess Cornelia? No, I have someone closer to me. Someone with the perfect length of hair to play with. If it was not her half-sister Cornelia, only one person could be the one closer to her. No way, exclaimed Duke. It was a fairly simple game, wearing dresses and ribbons. He did make a sour face every time, but still let me dress him up. Younger brothers are truly adorable, do not you think? Duke could fully understand the sufferings Leonhardt had to endure in Letty's hands. He silently sent his sympathies to the young prince as he gently tied the delicate, white lace ribbon on Letty's hair. Letty took a look of his handiwork. Tolerable, but I suppose this will do. But her smile betrayed that she was satisfied with what Duke had done. Duke nonchalantly replied. Then I'm glad to be of service. If you ever make a mistake so grave that you could no longer hold your seat as my knight, I would gladly take you in as my lady's maid. I'm thankful for the offer, but I don't have any plans on doing something that would make you offer that to me. Letty smiled contentedly and stood up. Her beautiful golden locks cascaded down from her shoulders to her back, in perfect timing with her movement as she turned. Duke saw all of that movement and he unconsciously stared at the palm of his hands. Her hair was beautiful. Are all women like that? It was smooth, shiny, and soft to touch. He did not know yet that this gesture meant he wanted to touch her hair again. Chapter 2. Something new. The sun is higher in Ilstra compared to Salvel. However, the air was dry, so it is still cool when under shade. All in all, it is quite a good place to stay. Letty, of course, had prepared her wardrobe to suit Ilstra's weather. For today, she wore an empire-cut dress made with ivory silk. Twists were added on the high waist for accent and the skirt, with dainty, yellow roses were embroidered on the silk which flows down freely. Ladies in Ilstra wore veils for protection against the harsh rays of the sun, so Letty had one prepared as well to match her dress. Her veil was made of the same ivory silk of her dress. Welcome to Ilstra, Your Royal Highness, Princess Letitia. It is an honor to have you grace us with your beauty, greeted Victor, the first prince of Ilstra. He had brown hair that turned reddish under the sun and gentle sepia-colored eyes. Ilstra and Salvel were on friendly terms with each other, so naturally, Letty and Victor were already acquainted. There was no need for the formal introductions and a more casual exchange of long time no see was more apt. I would like to thank you for inviting us in this commemorative event of re-establishing the friendship of our kingdoms. His Highness, Prince Severio, and my cousin, Charlotte's love story is famous in Salvel. Our citizens cannot hide their excitement for the upcoming wedding. Before, the responsibility of welcoming the guests used to be done by Letty's older brothers, first Prince Friedhelm and second Prince Guido. Letty used to stay along the sides, acting as conversation partners for the ladies. But now, Letty has to take on the role of being the face of Salvel, just like what Victor was doing right now. If possible, I would like to greet Charlotte later. You would like to greet her? Yes. Can I meet her before the wedding? Or will it be too much trouble? I know she is busy with the preparations. Victor's face clearly showed hesitation when Letty asked to meet Charlotte. Letty and Charlotte were first cousins. After the wedding, they could not see each other as frequent and as easily as before. It was natural for Letty to want to see her before the ceremony. Ilstra would have anticipated that much. So why the hesitation? But before Letty could even ask the question, Victor's face changed from hesitation to determination. I understand. I shall have you escorted later. But for now, please take the time to rest. I know you are tired from the long journey. Thank you, Prince Victor. Is there anything else you need, Princess Letitia? Well, I shall impose upon your generosity and ask for assistance. Could you lend me a lady's maid? My own had been inflicted with illness along the way. Victor gladly acquiesced to Letty's request, a completely opposite reaction when she asked for an audience with Charlotte. Guests coming from other countries usually meet some trouble during their journey, such as illnesses or wounds. This was the reason why the host country usually prepares an extra set of servants the guests could borrow during their stay. Victor excused himself for a while to make the necessary arrangements. Letty nodded, and kept her princess smile on her face as she silently whispered to her knight. Do not you find it odd how I feel safer with the maids to be provided by another country than the ones from my own? Then I suggest you work on searching for your lady's maid as hard as you do in searching for your knights, he replied. Well, I would not need to if you were a woman. Don't ask for the impossible, sighed Duke. But if you put it that way, things would have been a lot easier if you were the man. There was no need for a lady's maid to tie her hair. Letty was amused with Duke's comment and decided to play along. Really? If I were a man, then it means I will look like Prince Guido and have Prince Friedhelm's personality. Indeed, things would have been settled quickly and I doubt both of my brothers would still be alive. No. I take back what I said. If you were a man, your dream would definitely be world domination. Oh, I am glad you know your master so well. I think being the Knight of the Dark Lord would suit you as too. Letty was clearly enjoying their silly banter. Letty was surprised to have her request granted earlier than expected. And what was more surprising was to have Prince Victor personally escort her to Charlotte. She only wanted to wish her cousin joy for her married life, so she found Victor's seriousness quite strange. He seemed like he was going to an important meeting to discuss a difficult topic. The room they were shown to was located deep into the Ilstra's royal castle. Victor stopped in front of a large door and sent a wink to the maids standing by outside the room. Princess Charlotte is inside and had just finished the fitting for her wedding dress. Letty, with Duke and Craig trailing behind her, followed Victor into the room. Inside stood a lady clad in an elaborate white dress, her face covered with a veil. It has been some time, Charlotte greeted Letty with a smile, but her cousin gave no reply, which she found that strange. Letty heard Victor instruct the maid standing by the corner to lift up the veil. The maid followed his order and revealed the lady behind it. The bride was not Charlotte. Would you mind explaining, Prince Victor? The woman in the wedding dress did resemble Charlotte's features of blonde hair and purple eyes, but that was where the similarities end. They were completely different people. Charlotte stood uncomfortably under Letty's scrutinizing gaze until she decided to direct her eyes to question Victor. As you can see, Your Highness, Princess Charlotte is currently nowhere to be found in the castle. The one standing in front of you is the substitute bride that we have prepared. Why is she not here? Well, I am afraid we cannot, or rather, it is meaningless to blame our inaptitude for this case. Then either she was sick, or was having second thoughts about the wedding. If the latter, Letty had prepared herself to comfort Charlotte and was quite equipped for the situation. But neither of these possibilities answered the question why. Princess Charlotte, Victor paused, took a deep, deep breath and continued, had eloped with her lover. Letty's consciousness slipped for a moment. But thanks to her lifelong acting of being the delicate princess, she was able to prevent herself from shouting out her anger and astonishment and instead pretended to have gone dizzy due to the revelation. An elopement. What in the world is she thinking? This is certainly a diplomatic issue. Charlotte was a princess who always fell in love with love. The dream of her life was to be swept off her feet by her beloved knight. It seemed she had finally made her fantasy into a reality. The answer to the question why Charlotte is not the castle was because she ran away, a simple answer yet a very complicated matter. I understand the situation. Am I right to assume that she is yet to be found? Yes. And to make matters worse, my younger brother Severio went after Princess Charlotte, believing that she was tricked to agree to an elopement. He had been emotional ever since her disappearance and had decided to go on his own to find her. In other words, the groom ran after the runaway bride. Victor's seriousness a while ago was not because he seemed to be going into a meeting to discuss a difficult issue. He was actually going into one. Then this means we have an upcoming wedding, but the bride and groom are both missing. Exactly. Princess Charlotte's mother had also fallen ill because of this and her father was staying by his wife's side ever since. Letty nodded with a sigh and asked, who are the ones aware of this situation? From our side are their majesties, me and the maids attending the substitute bride. For Salvel, Princess Charlotte's parents and their attendants. I have already told them to keep this a secret even to their other relatives who will be coming here later. Only a handful of people then. How about the second prince? With the groom also gone, they would need to have someone to act the part for Severio. Being the third prince, the second prince of Ilstra was closest to his age and would be the best choice. However, Victor shook his head and said no. He had already married into a different country, therefore he is no longer Ilstra's prince. He does not know anything about this. Victor's decision was correct. They had to keep this situation a secret, and to do that, they had to limit the number of people who knew about it. This would lower the risk of the truth leaking out. Do not you find my brother envious? He abandoned everything to run after his love. If it were me, I would take your highness to the southern seas to spend our time together. Despite the exhaustion evident in his voice, Victor still could not help himself from uttering those sweet nothings. Letty took a deep breath to switch her mood. And I would decline the offer. The southern seas will definitely burn my skin. Putting that aside, we still have a wedding ceremony to worry about. The replacement for the bride can be easily concealed with a veil throughout the entire ceremony and excuse her afterwards due to fatigue. But how about the groom? Who will act as Prince Severio if the second prince is not available? I will be the one to take his place during the ceremony. We are brothers and look similar from afar. After the ceremony, we were also planning of excusing him and say that he would be looking after his new wife. The couple had to be present for the wedding ceremony, but the luncheon and ball afterwards could proceed even without them. The people would simply celebrate the event in their stead. At first we planned to get a maid that resembles Princess Charlotte's figure and have the same blonde hair and purple eyes. However, there was no one with the same eyes and found Miss Nicola upon widening our search. She is a daughter of a merchant doing regular business with the castle. She could also speak Salvolsh and shares the same features as Princess Charlotte. Victor signaled Nicola to greet Letty. It is an honor to meet you, Your Highness, Nicola greeted and curtsied before Letty. My name is Nicola and I promise to do my best until Princess Charlotte returns. Letty knew she had to return the greeting. This lady was suddenly asked to act as a substitute of a princess. She was definitely confused and worried. I am sorry for the trouble this has caused you, but I would also ask for your cooperation. Do not hesitate to ask me anything if you have any problems. There was hardly anyone from the guests aside from Ilstra and Salvel's royal families who knew Charlotte well enough to know exactly what she looked like. As long as Nicola carried herself like a royalty, no one would suspect she was not Charlotte. If Charlotte was found on time, there would be no problem. But if she was not found, then Letty would do everything she could to make Nicola resemble Charlotte as much as possible. I guess this plan can work. I will deal with Charlotte when she returns. Right now, the highest priority is to finish the wedding ceremony safely. However, Victor's worried expression did not change even after getting Letty's willingness to help. But we still have one more problem. Then a familiar voice called out from outside the door just as Victor was about to speak. Is Princess Charlotte present? The voice asked haughtily from the other side of the door. I have requested His Eminence to revise the wedding vows and include Salvel in it. Please take the time to read it. Letty immediately recognized the voice. Duke Northruth? Yes. The enviable man with 4 wives. I see. But I do not find him enviable in that sense, sighed Letty. The dukedom of Northruth is situated in between the kingdom of Salvel and the Kielf Empire, and is considered as the buffer state. 3 years ago, Duke Northruth took over the dukedom at the age of 25 after his father died. He was also known as the Silver Wolf Duke, not because of his silver hair, reddish-purple eyes and haughty presence, but for it to serve as a warning for his vicious character. He would not hesitate to go after the throats of his enemies. Letty could not help but wonder if the said Silver Wolf Duke had a close relationship with Charlotte, close enough for him to pay her a visit even before the wedding. Miss Nicola, please go inside the dressing room. Your Highness, please go with her. I shall face Duke Northruth, said Victor. Letty followed Nicola further inside the room to the dressing room under the pretense of fitting the wedding dress, which left Duke and Craig in the previous room with Victor. The dressing room was filled with immaculately white fabrics, delicate laces and tiara replicas. Letty decided to stay close by the door to listen to the conversation in the other room. Duke Northruth, it is a pleasure. You should have not bothered to do such a thing. Unfortunately, Princess Charlotte is fitting her dress at the moment. Please allow me to be of service. Victor did not invite Duke Northruth into the room. He was polite, but he was clearly asking the Duke to leave. No, I cannot bother your Highness for such a trifle thing. I know you have other matters to attend to. I shall gladly wait here for Princess Charlotte. But I cannot allow your Grace to wait for such a long time. I will let you know when. Letty did not even have to strain her ears to hear their heated exchange of go home and let me through. They were speaking loud enough for her to hear. Charlotte's maids from Salvel timidly filled in Letty with information on what was happening. Your Highness, we don't know why, but His Grace has continually doubted Miss Nicola since yesterday. It seems he knows that she is not Princess Charlotte. Maybe we just did not know about it, but His Grace and Princess Charlotte have a close relationship, commented by another maid. Northruth was established after gaining autonomy from Salvel. Thus, despite being called a neutral state, Northruth was still closely affiliated with Salvel, and this relationship had continued on ever since. It would not be surprising if Duke Northruth and Charlotte, a daughter of a royal duke, were acquainted with each other. Letty traced back her memories for any possible interactions between Charlotte and Duke Northruth to prove the maid's speculations, if they had a relationship close enough for him to know from afar that Nicola was not Charlotte. Duke Northruth had only visited our kingdom 13 times. And all of those times, I do not think there was any chance for them to develop such a relationship. Duke Northruth was frequently seen together with the first and second princes of Salvel, Friedhelm and Guido. But he was never seen together with Charlotte. With their ages being close to one another, Letty and Charlotte grew up as cousins close to each other. Charlotte had a habit of sharing with Letty everything that happened to her, from her dance partners for the waltz to the man she was currently fancying. And never had she mentioned Duke Northruth. In fact, they did not have that much of an acquaintance for him to even doubt Charlotte. So why was he doing this? Letty's musings were cut by a loud noise at the other room. "Please refrain yourself from opening that door," shouted Victor. "I only want Princess Charlotte to read the vows. His Eminence had asked me to personally confirm with the bride if the vows are fine for their approval. I cannot ignore such a request." Duke Northruth considered the bishop's request as an important mission. He was trying to force his way into the dressing room, and Victor was doing his best to hold him, but it would only be a matter of time before the stubborn Duke succeeds. "Is His Eminence related to Duke Northruth?" asked Letty. She was somehow suspicious of this request of Duke Northruth. "I heard that His Eminence was from Northruth," answered the maid. "So that means he is on Duke Northruth's side." Letty went back to thinking about how to solve this current problem. Then how about have Miss Nicola go out and meet him to receive the letter? She can have the veil on and tell him that you were still in the middle of your fitting. That way, Duke Northruth would fulfill his mission of personally delivering the letter, and Victor could think of some excuse to send him out of the room. But Nicola had other concerns. Duke Northruth would not be satisfied with just the acceptance of the letter. He would ask me to read the vow, and I cannot read Hellas. Culture changes, time passes. Ilstra have the tradition of saying the wedding vows in Hellas and not in their native language. Hellas is treated only as a cultural language, and no one uses it in their everyday life. The sound and writing system of Hellas was well preserved, unlike her mother language, ancient Hellas, which only had the writing system left. This language was considered as the language of the first circles and was only studied for the sake of knowing it. Letty and Charlotte both learned this language but had never actually used it. "I see. So we need a bride that can read Hellas then?" If they could present Duke Northruth with such a bride, he would have to retreat for now. This will be enough to give her time to gather information and think of a plan. Letty immediately gave instructions to the maids. "Duke Northruth, please stop." "What is the matter?" "I am not going to woo her to be my fifth wife." "That is not a funny joke, Your Grace," warned Victor. Then suddenly the door to the dressing room opened. Victor was shocked. Duke Northruth was excited. If he were a wolf, he would have been showing his fangs right now. "Please excuse my tardiness. I was still in the middle of fitting my wedding gown and could not come out immediately to greet Your Grace. I hope you did not wait that long. Please do not be bothered about my appearance." A bride clad in layers of white fabric and covered with a veil emerged from the room. She gathered her seemingly heavy skirts and slowly walked towards the men. Her gracefulness was proof of her high status. All eyes were on the bride, who spoke with a slightly coarse voice. "What happened to your voice, Princess Charlotte? I think I have overused it a little with all the conversations. The dry air here might have also taken its toll on me. But please do not worry, because I shall have it healed before the wedding." With the veil still on Charlotte, her face was unreadable. "I hear you have something to discuss with me, Your Grace." "Yes, I do," nodded Duke Northruth. His Eminence, in his good offices, had revised the vows to consider Salvel, Princess Charlotte's homeland. "I believe this wedding is also a celebration for the relationship and prosperity of the two countries." Charlotte took the parchment and slowly opened it. Inside the letter was a wedding vow written in Hellas. Victor was pleading silently with his eyes for Charlotte to say that she would confirm it later, but his message was not conveyed. "Duke Northruth, please excuse Princess Charlotte for now. She is still in the middle of her fitting after all. I would suggest for her to check it later with Severio." Victor tried once again to drive Duke Northruth out. He did already accomplish the task of delivering the letter personally. The vow for Prince Severio is being written by His Eminence right now. "Princess Charlotte's confirmation will be enough for now," said Duke Northruth. He was quite confident that Charlotte cannot read the vows. Duke and Craig knew not how to help Victor and could only stand by and watch. "Victor Oniasama, both His Grace and His Eminence are busy persons. Please let me confirm it now." Charlotte started reading the vow written in Hellas. "I, Charlotte, accept Severio as my husband." She read the vow rather slowly, as if she was trying to remember how each character was to be read. It was, after all, a language she never had the chance to use anywhere outside of the schoolroom. Northruth was not the only one surprised to hear Charlotte read Hellas, Victor also was, and he eyed suspiciously the lady underneath the veil. To be able to find you in this vast world, and to be your partner for all my life is an, excuse me, how is this word read again? Charlotte slightly tilted her head to one side and timidly looked at Northruth. It is honor. Thank you. Please forgive my lack of knowledge. Do not fret, Princess Charlotte. 'Tis a special word and used only in this kind of situation. After that Charlotte was able to read the rest of the vow without any problems. She carefully folded the parchment again and gave it to Duke Northruth. I thank you very much, Your Grace, for the trouble you took in bringing it here personally. I think the vow was beautiful. Could you also relay my gratitude for His Eminence? Of course. By the way, Princess Charlotte, do you remember our meeting 2 years ago at the theater during the festival of Salvel's founding? Charlotte slowly inclined her head to the side, thinking about the answer to Duke Northruth's more direct inquisition. You might have mistaken me for someone else. I did attend the ceremony that year, but I was not able to watch the play because I was not feeling well and had to retire early. Is that so? My apologies then, it must have been someone else. Thank you and sorry for taking up your time. Duke Northruth took his leave and reached out his hand to take Charlotte's and bow over it. Or so they thought. He reached out for the veil and was about to take hold of it. Everyone was shocked and stood still except for one man. No matter how beautiful the bride may be, or how much tempting it is to lift her veil, only the groom, His Highness Prince Severio, has the right to do so. I think we should still observe tradition, even though this is just a fitting. Duke stopped Duke Northruth's hand just in time, preventing the revelation of the lady behind the veil. Please excuse my sudden impulse. I was taken in by her beauty and forgot myself. Duke Northruth apologized without a trace of remorse on his face. Instead, he faced Victor and flashed him a smug smile. It seems the third one did her homework and studied well. With that, Northruth left and Victor's guards quickly locked the door. Things have settled down. For now. You were quick on noticing it would be bad if he lifted the veil. The bride lifted the veil on her own to reveal her identity. She was not Charlotte or Nicola. The bride was Letty. Victor and Craig were surprised with the revelation, but Duke casually shrugged his shoulders. It was obvious it was Your Highness even with the slight change in your voice. Besides, if His Grace saw your face, he would immediately recognize you. Miss Nicola is unknown to him, but the first princess of Salvel isn't. Letty remembered a similar incident before where Duke also recognized her even though her face was hidden. It happened when she met Guido alone in the middle of the night and Duke was out for patrol. Letty could not help but admire how astute Duke was. You are right. It would have been the end of us if he saw me. And I thought I imitated Charlotte well. I think your voice impersonation was impressive, Your Highness, praised Victor. I thought Princess Charlotte had returned. Victor, being Charlotte's future brother-in-law, had conversed with Charlotte several times and therefore knew how Charlotte speaks. If anyone who knew Charlotte this much would hear Letty's imitation a while ago, they would immediately notice that Letty had perfected the gentle and dreamy manner her cousin speaks. And that is what makes Princess Letitia all the more charming. Victor, as usual, was an expert in courting women. He could not say such a sweet line in this serious situation if he was not one, but Letty just shrugged it off. Thank you, and moving on, I purposely made mistakes in reading the vow so to make the act more realistic. If I read it perfectly, he would be more suspicious and think that we hired a female scholar this time. Letty smoothed up the creases on the skirt and continued. However, compared to Prince Victor who thought that the real Charlotte came back, Duke Northruth clearly identified me as the third one. He is definitely up to something. Do you mind telling me everything related on this situation, Prince Victor? Letty asked. She remembered she told Ledger during her latest visit in the Night King's study that this state visit would only need her smiles, but how wrong she was. This predicament might just be as hard as a visit for entering a treaty or negotiating territory boundaries. Letty promised to cooperate with Ilstra after Victor and Nicola had related everything about the situation and then returned to her room. She dismissed the servants upon entering her room and asked Duke and Craig to stay. Let me remind you not be apologetic towards Ilstra due to Charlotte's disappearance. Half of her was Ilstra's already ever since she was engaged. We, Salvel, are only willing to help Ilstra out of pity. To be honest, she wanted to apologize profusely and take all the blame for this embarrassment, but this was not a problem that could be solved with her apology alone. Besides, she carried the weight of Salvel on her back. She cannot make any move that would put her own nation at a disadvantage. She might sound like the worst kind of person, but she wanted Ilstra to feel indebted to her due to the help she was willing to extend them. If you have anything to say, I am all ears, she asked the two knights, but her questioning gaze was only for Craig. It was her small consideration for him since he was not her knight. I see neither of you have anything to say. Craig kept his silence as he observed Letty. She had been feeling his intense stare on her for some time already. I am glad that this will be graded through addition and not through demerits. I am certain he despises any action that prioritizes the country. Johannes's advice had proven useful because it had allowed Letty to move as she pleased. Let us review the facts again. Duke Northruth arrived here from Northruth 2 days ago to attend the wedding. Yesterday, he asked for an audience with Charlotte. The information Letty got from Victor about Northruth was nothing spectacular. From what he said, Northruth just suddenly requested to meet Charlotte. Prince Victor suspected Duke Northruth personally knew Charlotte due to the relationship of their home countries, so he thought he should not let him meet Charlotte's impersonator. He made up an excuse to prevent the meeting. After that, Northruth seemed to have seen Charlotte as she went to the cathedral for the wedding rehearsal. He was able to say Princess Charlotte is very much changed even by seeing her from afar. He even commented that her Salvolsh had a thick Ilstran accent, though I am uncertain he did hear it so. I think it is safe to say that he knows the truth about Charlotte. Letty raised up her hand and counted up to 3 with her fingers. There are 3 possibilities for this case. First, Charlotte and Duke Northruth had a closer relationship that I did not know of. This closeness allowed him enough familiarity to Charlotte's appearance that he was able to recognize immediately that the Charlotte in front of him was a fake. But the possibility for this is low. Second, someone from Ilstra told Duke Northruth about the situation, in other words, a spy. Ilstra and Northruth were currently at odds with each other due to their disagreement about the tariffs. Having a spy or 2 to watch the enemy state was largely possible. However, I also find this unlikely since he only seemed to know about Charlotte's disappearance but not about Prince Severio going after her. If the information came from a spy, he should also be aware of the prince's sudden departure. Victor said that Northruth had been persistently asking for Charlotte, but not even once asked for Prince Severio. Third, the man Charlotte ran away with was somehow connected to Duke Northruth. Out of all the 3, Letty considered the third as the most plausible. Now, if the man was connected to Northruth, the Duke would have certainly lent his hand to help them escape because he knew well what this incident entailed. To cancel a wedding because the bride ran away with some man a mere few days before the wedding was nothing short of a scandal. Guests from other countries had already arrived and Ilstra could not possibly tell them to go home because there was to be no wedding. This would ruin Ilstra's reputation to the world. If we consider the third possibility, we can say that Duke Northruth knows everything, and no matter what we do, he can say confidently that the present Charlotte is an imposter. But as long as we do not make any mistake, we can still make everyone else believe that the woman in the wedding dress is the real Charlotte, regardless of what Duke Northruth says. Northruth would most likely continue on searching for evidence to prove that Nicola was not Charlotte. The only thing they could do was to prevent him from getting the evidence he needed. If they could go through the ceremony safely without anyone else doubting the bride's identity, no one would believe Northruth despite his claims. I think Duke Northruth's objectives are clear. He wants to get his hands on anything that could prove Charlotte is a fake and use these to demand lower tariffs from Ilstra. However, I find his manner strange. Considering the information from Victor, it seemed that Northruth had not even tried to be discreet about his suspicions. It could even be said that he was provoking Ilstra to have some reaction. He is not a stupid man, so I find his actions of making his suspicions almost public odd for someone like him. It seems like he was telling Ilstra to be wary of him. I find the absence of his servants strange as well. Northruth is a small nation, but his grace is still the Duke of a dukedom, commented Duke. This comment from Duke made sense of the whole situation. Letty found the reason for Northruth's peculiar behavior. I have not had servants of my own for a while, so this particular detail escaped me. That was a good point, Duke. This only means one thing. Duke Northruth is acting as a decoy. Northruth's servants were carefully conducting the investigations in the dark. To draw everyone's attention away from his men, Northruth purposefully put up a dramatic act. They should ask Victor afterwards if there was anyone serving Nicola who was financial problems or connected in any way to Northruth. Though he most likely had that covered as well. He was going to be Ilstra's king in the future after all. From now on, do not think Northruth is for Salvel. Consider them an enemy, ordered Letty. Ever since the young Prince Northruth succeeded his father and became the Duke Northruth, he had demonstrated strong leadership skills. He was aggressive and fearless in relating with other countries, in contrast to his father who was a calm leader. Letty knew about this from Friedhelm, who once said 10 years ago, that man's ambitions know no bounds. He will be Salvel's enemy. That would be all for today. I know you are tired as well. The Ilstran guards shall be my escorts for tonight. Rest well. Duke and Craig bowed their heads and turned to take their leave. Duke looked back over his shoulder as he stopped in front of the door. Letty silently conveyed with her eyes, "We shall talk later." Her knight nodded his understanding and closed the door softly. "Is Her Highness truly a leftover?" asked Craig the moment they reached an empty corridor. His voice had a trace of surprise and Duke understood his reaction quite well. Her Royal Highness, Princess Letitia, had been deemed as a perfect princess, but she was not even considered to have the potential of being the monarch. Anyone who had only known her based on the rumors and her image of being the princess who picked up the leftover crown from her brothers would be astonished at her performance a while ago. She was calm and composed, understood the situation perfectly, was decisive on their succeeding actions, and her authoritative personality would brook no opposition. It was extremely far from how the rumors portrayed her. Indeed, I have heard the leftover princess moniker for Her Highness everywhere, but I have never found her to be one ever since I became her knight. Is that so? Duke wondered how Craig viewed Letty after seeing her perform under duress. He sincerely hoped he would not be prejudiced against her and see her for who she really was. Ilstra's night could be chilling, and sleeping with only a short-sleeved nightgown could leave one with colds the next morning. Letty, of course, wore a comfortable nightgown tailored for Ilstra's weather as she went over the window to feel the night breeze. Your Highness? Duke said as he knocked on the door. Come in, bid Letty. Could you leave us alone for a while, she told the servants that were lent to her. They promptly left the room, which was prepared for Letty's stay in Ilstra, leaving her and Duke alone. Before anything else, let me quiz you first. Tell me everything you know about the Duke Northruth. Duke thought that Letty was about to tell something important. Instead, he found his knowledge as the knight of the first seed of the round tested. August Carlsen Northruth inherited the dukedom of Northruth 3 years ago after the older Duke Northruth died. He has gained the alias Silver Wolf Duke due to his aggressiveness and fearlessness. He would not mind going against bigger countries despite the size of Northruth, the buffer state. Duke clearly remembered the details Letty taught him during their study sessions about the important personages of foreign countries. I see you have been paying attention to your studies. Anything else? I heard from Prince Victor that he currently has 4 wives. Your Highness had also surprisingly complimented him as smart. Within the whole time he had known Letty, he knew that the only people she considered worthy of the praise were her 2 older brothers, her younger brother for certain topics, and just a few more others. Do not be fooled about his wives. They are highly capable retainers. He is an infuriatingly liberal leader, a reformist. If she could, she would have spat out this begrudging praise for the man. Northruth, as you have mentioned, is a small country. They lack both natural and human resources, so he gathered people from other countries. He told them, if you think you are the person I am looking for, come. I care not a whit about your sex. This was invitation enough for the women who wanted to participate in politics, regardless of their abilities. He started his hunt for accomplished people when he was just a prince. This story surprised Letty because she also had the same ideas, but had to give up on it eventually. Salvel was a big nation with many capable subjects, only that they were not under her command at present. There was no need for her to search for them outside her own homeland, and forcing ideas too liberal now would be met with opposition. And yet, Northruth, despite being small, was able to do this. The participation of women in politics did meet some resistance in Northruth, so he had decided to welcome these women as his wives. But wouldn't accepting foreigners make them vulnerable to spies? They are quite strict about that, I think. I have heard before that several women were already killed due to this. However, these 4, or rather the many other women around him who are still alive, seem to be serving him because they adore him. Duke Northruth's political prowess, ambitiousness, and the highly capable people supporting him had garnered him the praise of being in Letty's list of highly dangerous people. She was certain he would wage war against some nation someday, and that could be Salvel. That would be all for Duke Northruth. I think you would understand him better as you see him in action. There is another matter I wish to tell you about, Letty said as she kept her seat at the sofa and looked up at the standing Duke. It is about Craig Bard. Though I think I should start at the beginning. Let us begin with the plans of His Majesty. His Majesty? Yes, Letty said with a sigh. I think Father, His Majesty, had plotted this whole diplomatic visit to test me if I have the qualities needed to be a queen. What I am referring to is the spoiled wine incident which led everyone incapacitated except for you and me. What would she do if she lost all of her trusted people? Could she make the right decisions as the queen? Letty was being tried and tested. The first thing I was supposed to do was to ask for assistance from the nearest camp of the order. Then it happened that Craig Bard was there due to a joint exercise that was probably planned in advance. My father has selected him as my examiner. His Majesty had included Vice Commander in his plans? Duke was confused. The feud between His Majesty and Craig was famous. Letty understood Duke's confusion on the matter because she had the same reaction as well. However, much time had passed since their fallout. Just as her father had decided to make this move, Craig might have had a change of heart as well. But my test is just an excuse. Because this whole act is, I think, Father's way of testing the waters with Craig. Johannes acted as his messenger to relay his plan of using Craig, a man who has distanced himself from the battle of power and was critical of the royal family, as the best person to give a fair judgment about me. That was detailed, coming from speculation alone. I had received some words of wisdom from the unfortunate commander stuck in between the 2 stone walls. Letty concluded that Johannes had taken her father's side in this case, despite taking Craig's side for the longest time since he had always taken into consideration Craig's opinions. This meant that Johannes had his own reasons as well. I know not how much of father's intentions Craig understands. Knowing him, he may be taking father's excuse seriously, so I do not plan on doing the princess act with him. I would not have him report to father that I was, as the rumors say, a leftover princess. The only option left for him is to recognize my suitability to be the next queen, declared Letty with confidence. Duke observed Letty and found her relaxed and comfortable. No signs of overeagerness to please or anxious worry could be seen in her countenance. He could even say that she was enjoying this. Then the Craig faction you referred to back at the inn was the Royal Knight's vice-commander, as your examiner had asked to eavesdrop on your conversation? Yes. It is highly probable he had asked the cooperation of the knights he brought with him. All of my movements are probably being monitored. Letty professed her desire not to show any vulnerability, and then her expression softened as she looked at Duke. But there is one problem. You. Me? Yes, you. His Majesty's script most likely included you to be one of the casualties of the spoiled wine. However, he was not aware about your sworn oath not to drink while on duty. You were not supposed to be here with me. Her father probably did not expect Duke to be this dutiful, and this was a delightful surprise for Letty. Thus, you need to leave me for a while and go search for Charlotte. I refuse. This is a Master's order. I still refuse. Let the other knights search for Princess Charlotte. My duty is to stay by your side. Letty smiled. Duke said exactly what she thought he would. But what if Craig ordered you to search for her? You are still a knight of the Royal Chivalric Order. If Craig, your commanding officer, ordered you to go, can you refuse? Well, Duke hesitatingly started. Letty stood up and walked towards Duke. Let us put it this way. If I do not order you to go, Craig will. Now, whose order would you obey, mine or Craig's? Duke was silent. Letty took another step towards him. Please, trust me, Duke. Duke was about to say something, but decided against it and simply sighed. His expression clearly showed his aversion to the idea. I shall follow my master's order. Albeit unwillingly. And that is enough. Thank you. Now that Duke was out of the picture, the stage was set for her test. All that was left was for her stellar performance. Starting tomorrow, she would have to brace herself to stand alone in a field where letting her guard down was unforgivable. Then you'd better hurry and successfully get your second. That way, I can leave your side with peace of mind. I know. Just you wait and see. And be careful of Prince Victor. He is obviously going after you. It is like a greeting for him. He is half joking about it. Letty thought this was enough to silence Duke, but it was not. And that means he's half serious about it. In other words, there is half a chance he would impose himself on you, and when that happens, you cannot simply sweep him under the rug with your status. Letty realized her choice of words were wrong, so she chose them carefully this time. If you see a pretty flower, you would honestly compliment its beauty, would you not? This is the same as Prince Victor's flattery. He will be married to his country in the future, and he is well aware of that, so he uses this time being a prince to flirt with partners that would not take him seriously. Am I clear? Crystal. And I rather find myself impressed with your highness's boldness in comparing yourself to a beautiful flower. Duke sighed at how much Letty could praise herself. Letty brushed off his comment just as she brushed her hair off her shoulders. You see, I did not say the prettiest flower because I am fully aware of my beauty. I grew up being praised to be as beautiful as Prince Guido. I wonder if they do not see that comparing me to a man is humiliating at best. This comment meant that people unconsciously thought Guido was more beautiful. Friedhelm once had the audacity to tell her, no, the difference lies with your allure. Friedhelm disappeared right after he said these words. His survival instincts probably told him to flee. Letty fully expected Duke to agree with her. But instead, he stared at her face and inclined his head to one side. Is that so? I think your highness is more beautiful. There is no need for you to comfort me. You do look the same, so 'tis just a matter of preference. If Letty tried to read too much into Duke's words, she would be treading on dangerous grounds. Letty sighed and teased him instead. Could you try saying the same line with more feeling, maybe a bit more romantically? Duke was silent for a while and then made the perfect smile and said the same line, you do look the same, so 'tis just a matter of preference. Letty wanted to have a harmless flirtation with someone not to be taken seriously, but Duke could not perform the role well. Deciding Duke could not do it like Victor, she was about to dismiss him and end their little game when he did something unexpected. Your Highness, called Duke, and he grabbed her arm, pulling Letty's lithe body easily and enclosing her in his strong arms. Duke was yet to give up on the challenge. Before Letty could even react, Duke placed his hands on her neck and waist and whispered to her ear in a low voice. You look the same, so 'tis just a matter of preference. Duke immediately released Letty after the deed was done, since he had learned before that Letty's reflex was to throw in a combination punch. Saying it with action was better, right? Why you? Letty had her fist ready to be launched, but the distance Duke had placed between them made it difficult for her to land a punch. Letty's usually steely gaze did not have its usual impact. Her thoroughly flushed countenance did not help in giving her glare the sharpness it normally had. Duke knew Letty was a sheltered princess, despite her strong personality, and had no experience with interacting with men, so he decided to perform this counterattack. He could not hide the smile surfacing his face with Letty's satisfyingly innocent reaction. You do know what awaits you if you do that again, don't you? I'll be fired as your knight and will be demoted as your lady's maid. I am perfectly aware of your plans for me, your highness. And with that, Duke gracefully accepted Letty's dismissal of him as she pointed him out to the door. He took one last look at Letty by the door. What? You have an early start tomorrow. Go and get some rest. They were not the kind of people who would get sentimental and say tearful goodbyes for a short separation. Your highness, the best of luck. Not see you later? You're going to battle tomorrow, right? With his grace and vice commander? Yes. Then I wish you luck as well. Bring back Charlotte safely before the wedding. No sentimental farewells. Only simple words conveying their trust for each other. After she heard the door closed shut, Letty told herself, I can no longer be the leftover princess. I will not lose against Duke Northruth and Craig. Letty, at this moment, had truly taken her first step towards being the next queen of Salvel. Chapter 3. Something old. You sent Duke to search for Princess Charlotte? When Craig visited Letty's room the next morning, Duke was long gone. He was probably tracing back the roads to Northruth, just as Letty had commanded. If the man Charlotte eloped with is truly connected to Duke Northruth, then I am fairly certain they would be heading to Northruth. I ordered Duke to check along the main road and ask around if they happened to find an eloping couple. That is not what I meant, protested Craig. Letty understood what he was trying to say. Duke was not in Ilstra as a royal knight of the order. He was here as an honorary knight whose sole purpose was to protect Letty, and yet she sent him away. Craig, I know this sounds ironic, but I feel safer here inside a foreign land's castle than when I am in Salvel's royal castle. Besides, you said that you would be staying by my side. I have no need for such tight security. Letty was standing right in the middle of the battle for power in Salvel between the three Grand Marquesses. She could be attacked inside the royal castle any time, day or night. Moreover, staying by my side would be more convenient for you, would it not? Letty sent Craig a knowing smile, conveying to him that she was aware of his true purpose for this trip. Your Royal Highness, His Grace, the Duke Northruth has arrived to call, announced the maid. Letty changed her focus from Craig to the Duke. Please tell him that I am yet to recover from the tiring journey and cannot receive visitors at the moment. He may come back again this afternoon if he is willing. I am sure he just wished to invite me to break my fast with him. I understand, Your Highness, said the maid and left the room. Was it fine for you to refuse His Grace's invitation? Asked Craig. He thought that after Letty declared him to be Salvel's enemy, she would be facing him head-on, so he was surprised that she chose to avoid him. Yes, it is. He did not come here because he truly wanted to pay me visit. He only felt duty-bound to give his respects to the representative of Salvel's king, Northruth's former sovereign. I am willing to bet that he was delighted to be refused. They were acquaintances, but not friends. Though Duke Northruth had established some sort of friendship with her older brothers since either of them could have been the next king then. I also believe another meeting is too soon. You and Duke were present there when he visited Charlotte and now, he would see you here with me. I do not want to do anything that may lead him to suspect me as the third one. If he was intuitive enough, he might figure this out immediately. She did not want the Duke to think that Salvel was cooperating with Ilstra in covering up Charlotte's disappearance. I also do not have any plans of going out today, so you and the other knights may use this time to rest. There are some things a lady ought to do. Letty stretched out her arms inside the tub filled with a milky white concoction made of crushed pearls and medicinal oils. She had been cooped up inside the carriage for so long that her body felt stiff all over. The bath not only refreshed her body but also her tired soul. My skin has definitely suffered a lot during this trip. Her skin did not have its usual fineness due to her inability to give it proper care during the travel, and the constantly dry weather had aggravated it. She scooped up some of the pearly liquid and gave her cheeks a generous splash. She wondered if she could regain her skin's luster in time for the wedding. I would not be worried if I were you, Your Highness. You say it had suffered, but I say it is still beautiful, reassured the maid. Your Highness, we have received this toilet water highly recommended by Napagna's queen. I heard this is quite popular right now. Would you like to try it? These social gatherings were also a place for countries to promote their home products to the visitors from other nations. Most likely, this toilet water had been distributed in the rooms of all the female guests and was yet to reach Salvel's market. The maids from Ilstra had a different knowledge about the latest fashions. Letty smiled to herself as she found this in itself interesting. Indeed, I have heard that this is currently in fashion here in Ilstra and wanted to try it once. After her body had its fill of the luxurious bath, the next one to be cared for was her hair. Letty's hair was soaped and washed in a medicated bath, and then the maids applied camellia perfumed oil on her golden locks. The sweet scent of the oil filled the room, and it helped relieve the tension that was building up in her body for the past few days. Letty was savoring this moment of respite. "I guess I need not trim the ends for now," said Letty as she inspected the ends of freshly washed hair. Without a lady's maid to aid her, wearing her dresses had been the most difficult task. Her simple day dresses worn during her incognito walks were easy enough to wear on her own, but her formal dresses were not. She almost strained her back several times just to tie the ribbons for her stays. And as such her hair had suffered by being the last in her priorities. "I now feel ashamed that I let Duke touch my hair in that state," whispered Letty to herself. "Next time, I shall let him touch my hair again once it has retained its full glory." Letty did not want Duke to think that that was how her hair normally felt. She knew that he would not know the difference, but it was a matter of a lady's pride. "Your Highness, I have heard that this orange oil is good for your nails." "I see. But we should trim first my nails before applying the oil." In the midst of all these female activity was one man who intently watched the daily goings of a noble lady's life. Craigbard took Duke's place as Letty's guard and had been staying close by the princess since this morning. His expression seemed to say that he was impressed on how Letty did not tire of the whole process. She had a ready answer. "All of this is part of being a lady. There is a big difference between a lady who says this is all tiresome and yet does them to keep her beauty compared to a lady who says the same thing and does not do anything." Craig did not understand Letty's words, so Letty rephrased it and gave different example. "Compare someone who says that he is not interested in riding a horse but could ride versus someone who says he is not interested and does not ride at all. Do you not find them different? The latter simply sounds like someone giving an excuse. The complaint would not be an excuse if it was said after giving it try." Craig seemed to understood what Letty wanted to say this time, since the example given was understandable even for a man. "Your Highness, His Royal Highness, Prince Victor, wishes to speak with you. Shall we let him through?" a maid asked while she was still in the middle of doing her nail care. The maid continued on relaying Victor's message, but Letty already knew his purpose about the substitute bride. "Please show Prince Victor to the drawing room. Could you help me change?" If Victor was seen visiting Letty to discuss some business, no one would suspect something was amiss. But if Letty was found to be a frequent visitor of Charlotte's, it was like telling Duke Northruth she was an accomplice about this case. Victor was shown to Letty's private sitting room after she had changed to a dress fit to meet a prince and her nail care was finished. "Princess Letitia, I know what I am asking is an imposition, but could you please fit the wedding dress as well?" "Wedding dress?" Letty and Victor sat on opposite chairs facing each other with a table situated in between them. Victor did not touch the tea served to him and blurted out his business without any preamble. "I thought, should Duke Northruth test again the bride's education, I would like to ask you again to act as the bride. We had prepared 2 wedding dresses and we can have the spare altered to your measurements." A spare dress was prepared in case of an emergency, and they met with one. "I understand. Very well, let us do the necessary preparations. But I suggest we do the fitting in a room different from Charlotte's. I do not want Duke Northruth to suspect anything." "Of course. We shall take care of that immediately. And then after you have fitted the wedding dress, would you like to walk down the aisle in the cathedral with me? I would be glad to should you find yourself bereft of Her Majesty's presence on your wedding day because she was indisposed." Letty deftly dodged Victor's suggestive joke. After dramatically drooping his head down and his shoulders, Victor left to do the necessary preparations. The room selected to be Letty's dressing room to fit the wedding dress was the guest room right above her own guest chambers. This room was selected for the stealth and efficiency it provided due to its location, which was quite far from the prying eyes of the guests and close to her own room. "Thank you for waiting. This way please," said Victor as he led them to the room. The moment they entered the room, the maids held up Charlotte's wedding dress. The silhouette of the dress was a ball gown with voluminous, sheen, white silk skirt coming down from the waist. The capped sleeves would bare the shoulders and the collar bones of the wearer. The front of the skirt was simple to portray the image of purity. But the back skirt was a cathedral-styled train. It had several layers of gradually pleated organza, so the skirt was not heavy at all. The dress looked like a flower and in the middle was the bride. When Letty saw the fairy tale-like dress of every girl's dream, her eyes did not have the dreamy sparkle many girls would have. She looked at the dress with cold understanding. They would certainly end up with this design if they followed Charlotte's requests. Just how old does she think she is, exasperatedly thought Letty. Though her innocently charming looks would indeed suit this dress well. How about the veil? This is the original veil that was to go with the dress, a single layer of chiffon with roses embroidered at the end with pearl embellishments, described the maid as she carefully showed Letty the delicate veil. Letty touched the veil and declared that it would not do. A layer of chiffon was too sheer, her face could be seen through easily. "I understand that a simple veil would go well with this luxurious dress, but we have to hide my face from the public. Please have it altered to be made of several layers of chiffon." This alteration would make the dress's ensemble too fluffy, but it could not be helped. The bouquet? This is the sample, Your Highness. The bouquet was arranged as a big round bundle of snowball flowers with a single blue star at the center, a bouquet of purity and beauty. Well, this bouquet is not bad, but, contemplated Letty. We need to divert people's eyes away from the face of the bride. The same flowers may be kept, but change the arrangement to a cascade bouquet. Make it as extravagant as possible. Right away, Your Highness. A cascade bouquet, with its flowers trailing down towards the floor, could naturally bring the eyes of the spectators away from the bride's face. Craig observed Letty as she gave successive orders to the maids about the changes to be done about the wedding dress in order to lower the chances of anyone noticing the true identity of the bride. A man would never learn the different types of bouquet, but I believe Her Highness is very reliable for this matter. The prince standing beside Craig spoke to him, appraising him on how Victor interpreted his presence in the room. Your Royal Highness, Prince Victor, allow me to introduce myself. I am the Royal Chivalric Orders, started Craig. Border General, finished Victor. Your reputation has preceded you. Victor was the same breed as Letty. He was a royalty, and therefore did not forget names he had heard of even just once. It is a name too much for me, Your Highness, and I do not find it to be useful at the moment. Men are supposed to be useless during these times. Having someone to share this uncomfortable talk about wedding fripperies has been helpful already. Victor's casual way of putting him at ease reminded Craig of his former master. The prince's hair and eye color were different, but his countenance, which bespoke a king, were similar. Craig's mind was about to be washed away by nostalgia when the door of the dressing room opened and a voice spoke. I am sorry for the wait. Emerging from the door was Letty, dressed in pristinely white wedding dress. The maids followed behind to arrange and smoothen the lavish skirt of the dress while asking if the fit was fine. Letty wore the dress with ease despite the design being selective on who would suit it. She flashed a stunning smile to Victor. The dress shall only need a few minor adjustments, and the veil had to be altered to provide more cover for my face. The shade of my hair is slightly different than Charlotte's, but we are both blondes, so arranging it up in a bun would be enough. Princess, I find that hiding your lovely face behind a veil would be a waste. Why not come with me this instant and let us go and search for Princess Charlotte? And along the way, we may stop by the cathedral to exchange our vows. I appreciate the compliment, Prince Victor. The vision of the night was filled with this sweet scene between the prince and the princess. Letty looked so similar with his former master's wife, while Victor, despite the difference in appearance, had reminded Craig of his forgotten master. No, their highnesses are not them. And yet for a moment, he felt himself go back to those times when the only future he could envision was a bright one. Craig. Letty's call brought him back to reality. The fitting would take some more time. Could you go back to my room to feign my presence in there? Should anyone come, tell them I'm still tired from the journey. I understand. Please leave it to me. Craig bowed and left the room. The moment he was out, he told himself, pull yourself together. Remember why you have come here, and that is definitely not to take a trip down the memory lane, though Craig as he scolded himself. The Duke of Northwith's main point of interest as of the moment was not the upcoming wedding of Ilstra's prince, but rather the unveiling of the mystery bride. Once he discovers her identity and get hold of proof, he would use this to gain an advantageous position in the negotiation of tariffs with Ilstra. The investigation, in truth, was being held by his men, so he had to keep everyone's attention to himself and divert it from the search being done in secret. To accomplish the feat, he had been roaming around Ilstra's royal castle every day since he arrived in hopes of finding an excuse to meet the bride. The third one seems to be strong player. This might be an interesting diplomatic visit after all. The third bride Ilstra had prepared was not focused on resembling Charlotte's appearance. They had opted for the third bride to be properly educated and had intimate knowledge about the original bride. That bride is definitely intriguing. She certainly has the courage to challenge me head-on. I could feel the intensity of her stare even underneath the veil. That one is an excellent woman. I shall invite her to North Ruth after the issue with the tariffs has been settled. I want to know the face behind the veil. A maid came walking down the corridor carrying a bouquet of white flowers arranged like a waterfall. Duke Northruth thought this strange and discreetly followed the maid. Your Highness, I have brought the cascade bouquet. Northruth clearly heard what the maid said before the door to the room was closed completely. The maid addressed the person inside the room as Your Highness. The person behind it was definitely Princess Charlotte. Ilstra's maids should be stricter in teaching manners to their maids. They seem to forget they are not supposed to speak until the door is closed, thought the Duke with a smirk on his face. He did wonder why the bride would do her fitting inside a room in this isolated guest wing when she could be fitted in one of the rooms in the family wing, but he decided to ponder about it later. Now was the chance he was looking for. His visits had been announced and expected in the past, this surprise would render them no time to prepare to guard their secret. Maids were probably going in and out of the frequently enough that the door was opened to Duke Northruth without a question after he knocked. I see you have been staying here, Princess Charlotte. Duke Northruth. The bride, wearing a wedding dress and a thin veil, hurriedly turned her back. Victor and the maids were spurred into action to hide her. "Please refrain from entering so suddenly, Your Grace," reprimanded Victor. "That was rude of me. Please allow me to apologize directly to Her Highness." He could see through the veil that the hair was blonde. So who shall this bride be? Is she the second one with the Ilstran accented Salvolsh? Or is she the third one who could read Hellas with a Salvolsh accent? "But Princess Charlotte, may I know the reason why you are not doing your fitting in your own rooms? Are you, perchance, being way of my visits?" taunted Duke Northruth. He once again considered the location of this room. Why did Charlotte transfer to this room? Did they specifically choose this room? And then he remembered that he had been in this wing of the castle this morning, but at the floor beneath this. He was able to connect the dots. There were 2 knights of Salvel's Royal Chivalric Order in Charlotte's room yesterday when he visited her. If those 2 were not there to pay respects to Charlotte but with someone that was in the same room. I see now. The third one is. There was only one person among the guest list that would be around Charlotte's age, could read Hellas and speak a clear Salvolsh. On that day he visited Charlotte to have the vows read. Her Royal Highness, Princess Letitia, was in that room as well. "Please excuse my sudden departure. I just remembered I have some urgent business to attend to." The moment everything became clear, the Duke did not waste a moment and turned around. He did not wait for anyone to open the door for him. He opened it himself and walked away. His footsteps sounded so certain as they echoed through the empty corridor. Once the door was shut close, Charlotte took off her veil. He knows. He will now head to my room and check if I am there. Letty desperately thought, what could she do to prevent Duke Northruth from discovering her? I cannot possibly outrun him on the way to my room. Is there any other way? And then she saw the window and the balcony behind it. Once she has decided on something, all that was left is to put it into action. Letty grabbed the handle of the door to the balcony and swung it open. She lifted up the skirt of the dress as she placed her hands and feet on the handrail. Without flinching, she propelled herself down the other side of the balcony. "Princess. Your Highness. Please stop. Someone come here." Victor and the maids could not help their surprise at what Letty had done. But she ignored their cries as she grabbed hold of the balcony's edge and swayed herself back and forth to gain momentum, and once it was enough, she jumped down to the balcony of the room below. She landed safely on her feet. "Your Highness," cried a surprised Craig when he saw Letty entering the room from the balcony. Anyone who saw a lady wearing a wedding dress fall from the sky would certainly doubt their own eyes. "Weren't Your Highness in the room upstairs finishing the fitting of the dress?" asked Craig. "Duke Northruth is coming. You wait here." Letty hurriedly entered the dressing room after she ordered one of the maids to bring out any color of nail varnish. Once the door to the dressing room was closed, she cut the thread used to temporarily hold the dress with her nails, and the dress easily fell off her shoulders. She then took the water jug containing some more of the water used to wash her hair and poured its contents over her head. She took some random cloth and haphazardly patted her hair dry. After that she put on a bathrobe, kicked off her shoes and went back to the sitting room. "The varnish," she asked the maid. "Here, Your Highness. You may leave now. Duke Northruth would be coming soon." "Let him in," hesitatingly instructed Letty to the maid, and then she faced Craig. "Craig, hold this," said she as he threw to him a small bottle. "Your Royal Highness, Princess Letitia, it is wonderful to see you again," loudly greeted Northruth as he entered the room. The maid who answered the front door let him into the room after hesitatingly informing him that the princess was inside. This meant that she was not truly in there. Duke Northruth was confident that Princess Letitia was the third bride. He was certain. Until he saw the unbelievable scene playing in front of him. "It is wonderful to see you again, as well, Duke Northruth. Has it been 2 years since Salvel's Foundation Festival?" The lady sitting elegantly on the sofa was Princess Letitia. "Were you not in the room above stairs?" "Room above stairs? Is there something in there? I hope you could excuse my dress. You came in so suddenly and I had not the time to prepare." The dress Letty was referring to was her bathrobe, which exposed some of her upper legs due to her sitting position, and this appearance filled the room with her youthful charm. But then, right below her foot was the royal knight Craig kneeling before her with a small bottle of colored liquid in one hand and a small brush in the other. The strong scent of the nail varnish spread across the room. "I see I have interrupted something. Please excuse me. Please excuse me as well. This would still take some time, so could you please come back again later this afternoon?" Letty in Craig's position could only be interpreted as a mistress toying with her lover. This was the reason why the maid was reluctant in letting the Duke in. He now understood why. "By the way, I have now been the one tasked to handle the negotiations for Mount Gran. I would like to take this opportunity and talk about it." Mount Gran was a territory under dispute between Salvel, Northruth, and Kielf. Letty alluded to this tedious topic to at least draw away Duke Northruth's attention from the identity of the fake bride. This support was something only she could do. As expected, a flash of annoyance clouded Duke Northruth's face for a moment. I never thought your highness has such surprising tastes. Well then, until later, and we shall also talk about Mount Gran. Letty sent the Duke off with a sweet smile, and once the door was closed, she crestfallenly hung her head. Your highness? 'Tis nothing. I just realized I had made a definite first step towards becoming the Heartbreaker Queen. I see history is created like this. She was certain that Duke Northruth would share what he saw today with the other guests. He would probably say that Princess Letitia of Solvel likes considerably older men and enjoys being waited upon by her lover in broad daylight. If this gossip reached Solvel in any way, I could already see that stupid brother of mine sending portraits of older men as husband candidates. Imagining it alone makes me my blood boil. Both at me for making this blunder and that Prince Friedhelm who would not let this chance pass by to make a prank. Letty took a deep, deep breath to calm her angry heart. Ignore me. I was not talking about my posthumous name. Truly, I was not. Forget about it, insisted Letty. Let me apologize as well for letting you do this. I would have asked Duke to play the part if he were here. Letty straightened up and arranged her robe. The story about your devotion to your late wife is famous. And I could not imagine what you would feel if a rumor about you being my lover circulated around. Please accept my apology. Craig froze. He was at a loss for words due to the apology Letty extended to him. Letty stared at Craig's reaction, blinked several times, and then averted her eyes when she realized what his expression meant. You have the face I probably made that time, said Letty. That time? When I was about to go and visit Queen Sophia's grave and then Duke asked me, is one bouquet enough? Should we not have another one for your mother? For Letty, her late mother, first Queen Consort Julienne was nearly like a complete stranger. So when she was going to visit the grave of second Queen Consort Sophia, who passed away recently, the thought of bringing flowers to her mother did not even cross her mind. What I mean is that your face had a look of someone who had not even considered the mentioned idea. I'm sorry. Letty apologized. This time her apology was not meant for the possible rumor but for believing the rumors about him and creating this image of a highly noble Craigbard in her head. You may leave now. Please call in the maids. The dismissal prompted Craig to move again. He silently stood up and bowed his head. When the maid entered after Craig left, she instructed her to have a dress prepared. He did not seem to be burdened by the death of his wife. He was more like distracted by other things. If that were the case, then this meant that His Royal Majesty might have left a far deeper impression on the night than Letty initially thought. Later that evening, Letty invited Duke Northruth if he would like to accompany her to view the roses. She chose this time for this activity to prevent the Duke from making any moves about Charlotte because Victor still had duties as the host to perform and he would have left the bride's side. Letty and Duke Northruth were almost alone as they stood in front of the water fountain situated at the center of the elegant rose garden. Let me greet you again properly. It has been a long time since the last, Duke Northruth, said Letty, and she continued on to say that she was sorry for refusing to meet him earlier this morning. I believe we last saw each other 2 years ago. I have sent you an invitation for my younger sister's birthday celebration, but I suppose you were busy and only sent someone in your stead. Your Highness has sent me an invitation? Such a shame. If only I had known. Duke Northruth's ignorance about her invitation was not surprising. The host for the party held in honor of Solvel's second princess, Princess Cornelia, had been Guido, at least in name because it was Letty who organized everything about it. She took care of everything, from the guest list down to the finer details of the party. In other words, the one who sent an invitation to Duke Northruth was Letty, but it was signed under Guido's name. I should have put down everything that time to attend the ball. You have grown beautifully, Princess Letitia, in these 2 years I have not seen you. At this rate, the men would not be able to keep you alone for long. You are such a flatterer, Duke Northruth, returned Letty with a smile. She was not swayed by this sudden compliment Duke Northruth gave her. To be honest, she wanted to tell him that she was already beautiful enough to have men lining up in front of her 2 years ago, but decided to swallow her cheeky retort. It was clear that this man was not even interested in her 2 years ago, since during that time she was only a princess. Have you met Princess Charlotte? Asked he. Unfortunately, no. I had applied to Prince Victor since I had arrived if I could see her at least before she is wed, but she is busy with all the preparations to be done. I wanted to spend some time with her before she finally ties the knot, since after this, we could no longer see each other as easily as we did before. Letty's answer subtly emphasized that she was in no way related to the substitute bride incident. The Duke, however, did not even doubt her and simply nodded his acknowledgement of her story. Oh, I almost forgot. Congratulations on being selected as the heir, Crown Princess Letitia. I believe Solvel shall continue to prosper in the future. Thank you, Duke Northruth. Hearing you say that is a pleasure. The perfunctory greetings were now over. If not for Charlotte's disappearance, Letty would have ended their conversation there. Alas, it could not be. She had to occupy his free time for as long as possible. I hope you and your wives will come and visit Solvel again. My older brothers also said they wanted to see you again. I am sure they would be glad to have long talk with you, like about Mount Gran. Duke Northruth gave a half-grimaced smile at Letty's choice of topic, which she had already mentioned earlier, negotiation about Mount Gran. We are in a time of celebration. Let us not discuss about such a serious topic. The celebration is set to happen 5 days from now. Of course, I have no plans of starting the negotiation in the middle of merriment, replied Letty to show that she was not backing out of this. Duke Northruth thought of finishing this conversation as quickly as possible, so he decided to show off to Letty some knowledge as Princess would not have. Then, is your highness aware about the history of Mount Gran? In the first place, started Duke Northruth, but Letty took over to continue the narrative. It was during the reign of Salvel's 8th king when the territorial claim on Mount Gran became clear. Then, the Kielf Empire happened to take it from us once, but the 12th king of Salvel, King Alexander, was able to get it back after winning it from Kielf. After that, the next king, King Julius, decided to reduce the kingdom's land which had grown expansively during King Alexander's reign. He was the one who recognized Northruth's autonomy. The history Letty related was history as viewed from Salvel's side. Duke Northruth might have wanted to correct some points, but Letty would make him listen first. The problem about the territorial claim on Mount Gran started on the separation and establishment of the Dukedom of Northruth. Kielf also decided to take advantage of this and laid their claim on the land as well. And that leads us to where we are now. I think I have covered most of it, have I not? Duke Northruth nodded at Letty's eloquent recounting of Mount Gran's history. I see your highness is truly to be my negotiation partner. If you have any questions, I shall give you the most detailed answers. When Letty told Duke that she would get the responsibility about the negotiations for Mount Gran, he called it an obvious plot to gain merits, and he was right on the spot. If she could just make this deadlock situation move forward even by just a little, then it would be an achievement she needed to be recognized. Then, is your highness also aware about the rescue operations done 10 years ago when a great fire happened in the mountain? Salvel immediately dispatched the order to lead the search and rescue operation around the mountain and to administer first aid to the injured. Northruth was the one who provided shelter for the victims and Kielf were in charge of leading the evacuation. The costs for the road repairs were shouldered by the 3 countries based on the distance from their boundary. Letty had perfectly stored in her head all information about Mount Gran as preparation for the negotiation. Aside from the knowledge available from written literature, she had also personally heard the accounts of Lion King Alexander and Administrative King Karlheinz about what happened during their own time. She looked at Duke Northruth, her eyes warning him against underestimating her because she was just a princess. I see you have studied well. I now understand why Salvel had charged Princess Letitia with full authority for the Mount Gran negotiations. Shall we proceed now to the negotiation? Negotiation? Duke Northruth's stance changed abruptly. He suddenly wanted to skip all the necessary procedures for proper negotiation like the laying of groundwork done by the civil officers and go directly to having an agreement. Are we not disregarding too much of the process? Shall we be the ones to decide on all the details as well? Yes. Or can you not proceed with the negotiation without the groundwork laid for you, Princess? Duke Northruth stepped forward. He was not simply looking down at Letty, he was looking down at her as a person. Letty, who normally returns a provocation with more taunting, was at a loss for words for a moment. Well. Letty, of course, had all the knowledge necessary about Mount Gran. She could proceed with the negotiations even without the help of the civil officers. She also had a strategy on how to go about it and concrete plans prepared, however. Oh, but of course, your Royal Highness does not have the power to carry out in Salvel whatever agreement we could have here. The words of their lovely and kind-hearted princess are like the charming chirps of a little bird. He touched on a sore spot. Duke Northruth saw the reason behind Letty's moment of doubt. She could discuss and negotiate with Duke Northruth right then and there. They can also come up with an agreement both of them would approve of. He could bring the results of their agreement to Northruth and have it as a national decree even if he is met with some opposition. However, that was not the case for Letty. She did not have the power to do the same in Salvel. Just how many members of the peer had ever considered seriously the words of the leftover princess? Duke Northruth looked at Letty with predatory eyes reminiscent of a wolf as it stared at its prey. He took another step forward, forcing Letty to step backward. Ah, cried Letty as her heel bit something solid. She backed down until she reached the edge of the fountain and lost her balance. She was about to fall into the fountain when a strong arm grabbed her. That was close, dramatically said Duke Northruth after he caught hold of Letty's arm. Letty did not thank him, she glared at him. Well then, princess, why not say let us put politics aside and just enjoy viewing the roses? I am not knowledgeable about the different breeds of roses, but I would certainly oblige Princess Letitia's request. Letty understood well the meaning behind Duke Northruth's words. If you are a princess, then act like one. Do not talk about politics when you do not have substantial power to support your words. Could you not look down on me too much? I am perfectly able to have our negotiation now. No, you are not. The moment you showed doubt during a negotiation, you lose. It was just as he said. Letty could think clearly. She should have concealed her feelings of doubt and confidently said she was fine with the idea. But Letty had not been standing in the center stage for long. She definitely lacked experience and could not keep her composure, or at least the appearance of it, at that moment. This is mortifying, but I admit this is my loss, an utter defeat, thought Letty, so she decided to keep at least her pride intact. She would not allow him the satisfaction of saving her like she was a damsel in distress. Letty shook off the arm supporting her. The movement caused her to completely lose her balance, sending her body backwards. Splash. She sat inside the fountain, hair and dress dripping wet, but her eyes did not leave Duke Northruth's. You need not lend me a hand. Letty declined his offer before he could even offer it. I am sorry, but I hope you would not mind me cutting our conversation short. As you see, I would need to change clothes. Would you please excuse me? Take all the time you need, princess. Shall I call for your knight? I am sure you would take his hand. Duke Northruth turned around and walked away. As soon as the Duke had turned, Letty slowly stood up and went out of the fountain. Water dripped down from her hair and dress, creating a puddle beneath her feet. Your Highness, called Craig as he rushed towards Letty. He was watching her from afar and could only speculate on what happened based on what he saw. From where he was, he surmised Duke Northruth had cornered Letty, prevented her from falling to the fountain, but Letty refused his help and shook away his hand. However, he did not have any idea about what their conversation were. Are you all right, Your Highness? Craig asked again. Yes, I am. I do not need a coat as well. This is just perfect. I wanted to cool my head. Nonetheless, she could not stay wet outside for long in a chilly night. Letty started walking towards her room to change. Craig followed behind her. What happened with his grace? Our conversation got heated. That is all. And I also made a fool out of myself. Letty had no plans on elaborating on it. But Craig did not let go of the topic. You want to know the contents of our conversation? There is nothing you could give me a point for. But if this test was to be graded through point deduction, my loss a while ago would have warranted me to lose whatever points I had remaining and end this examination early. Craig came to Ilstra to be Letty's examiner. It was highly probable he wanted to know the conversation Letty had with the Duke. I was not referring to that. To be approached in such a manner would be unpleasant for anybody. Letty stopped in her tracks and faced Craig. She wiped away a drop of water from her cheeks to have a moment to hide her surprise at Craig's words. Are you, perchance, worried about me? Even though you are my examiner? But Craig understood her question to be because even though she was that man's daughter. Please forgive me. I forgot my place. I think my question did not have the meaning you connoted from it. Letty then remembered that a similar event like this happened with Duke before. Duke became worried about her well-being during that time as well, even though he had strongly refused Letty's invitation to be her knight. At this rate, I might end up thinking that all knights are kind-hearted, Letty whispered to herself and then continued in a clearer voice to address Craig. I just realized that my knowledge about you all came from outside sources. This is the first time I had the opportunity to ask you directly. She was certain before that he did not think favorably of her since she was the daughter of his sworn enemy. But it seemed now that he had been seeing her as an independent individual. I see now that the idea I had of who Craig Bard is a bit different from whom you truly are. If he did not look at her with eyes clouded by prejudice of being the king's daughter and the leftover princess, then she should also return the same courtesy to him. Letty looked straight at Craig and told him, I want to know you more. If Duke Northruth heard her say this, he would definitely comment, what are you saying now? Are you not lovers already? I would also, hesitated Craig but continued on. Thank you for the kind words, Your Highness, but I think you would only be disappointed the more you know about me. I am the one to decide whether you are to be a disappointment or not. Moreover, I also want you to know me better. But I, also, am afraid you would be disappointed to see that I am not princess-like at all. Letty stood tall in front of Craig. She was drenched, water was dripping from her hair, but her presence demanded attention. Letty stood there as a queen. The water droplets on her hair and dress reflected the warm orange hue of the sunset, and her natural beauty made her look nearly divine. Then that is one disappointment I will be glad to have as a citizen of Solvel. Craig's words were definitely what he genuinely felt. Ordered by his master to search for Charlotte, Duke rode on his horse to travel down the main road together with two of his colleagues from the Royal Chivalric Order. Duke, why are we going to this smaller village after that bigger town we just passed by? Wouldn't they wish to stay somewhere with an inn? One of his colleagues asked. Duke decided to forego investigation in the town and instead head further and ask around the people living the next village. He dismounted from his horse and pulled on the reins. He insisted that they were on the right track. Think about it. If you were to elope with a princess, wouldn't you want to avoid crowded places since you know her family would send out a search party to find her? To accomplish that, you would have to go to a secluded village, tell the people your story and vie for their pity to let you stay as well as to keep their presence a secret, explained Duke. I see. Have you ever eloped before, huh? Oh, with Her Royal Highness. That'll never happen, refuted Duke. Such a future of eloping was impossible for the two of them. It does not exist. Letty would never choose to throw away her country. Her most likely choice would be to make the man her lover. Then why this village after the town and not the one before? You are traveling with a delicate princess, after all. His colleagues were in the opinion that traveling with a princess and go further than a town that took almost a day of travel on horseback was difficult. But Duke had other ideas. As I've said, consider yourselves to be the ones eloping. You know they are after you. You'd want to have as much distance possible. You'd push yourself a bit to do it, right? I knew it. You really have done this before, jested his colleagues. Duke exasperatedly denied again the accusation and went inside the village to check for information. He spoke with a woman in middle 30s who was watering her plants. Duke was currently learning Ilstran, and thanks to Leonhardt's intense language courses, complete with the mockery and knock on head of book corners, he could now at least converse using the language. Good day, I am Duke Barchet of Salvel's Royal Chivalric Order. I would like to ask if you saw an eloping couple around here. The wife is blonde with purple eyes and looks like she is from a noble family, asked Duke after he introduced himself. An eloping couple? No, I haven't seen one, replied the lady. Duke's stiff Ilstran was understandable enough. However, he felt that the lady's cold reaction to his question was strange. He felt she knew something. If not, she would have been more curious to know the details about this, an elopement. In short, this was a good gossip. Would you happen to know of something? Did they ask you to keep their presence a secret? Please tell us what you know. The man is a member of an organization who makes their business out of fooling women with promises of love and marriage. They operate across the borders of Salvel, Ilstra, and Northruth. Working in the order meant that they also had to search for the whereabouts of eloping couples from time to time. Their seniors had taught them that people have a tendency of protecting the eloping couple and lie to them when they learn that they were searching for the couple in behalf of their parents. Thus, they better not straightforwardly tell people about their quest. As proof of that, I think the Ilstran army had already been asking around for them as well. Please help us. I do not want to have any more female victims, pleaded Duke. His sincere, serious, and handsome face had always been a favorite of Madame's, and this time was no exception. The lady was already wavering. Indeed, our army had come, but... Please, tell us anything that can be a clue about them. Duke's earnestness finally won out the lady, and she started relating the story. Well, it's just as you said, Sir Knight. 3 days ago, a couple came here in our village asking for a place to stay for the night. I also remember that the lady's hair was blonde because her hair was strikingly gold. I could even discern it in the darkness of the night. The next day, they rode their carriage heading to Northruth through the North Road. The lady, however, disclaimed that she was not sure if they were the couple Duke was looking for, but Duke was now certain. How did it go, Duke? Asked by one of his colleagues as he went back to them. I was able to get some detailed information. Princess Charlotte did stay here in this village for a night and then left early the next morning for Northruth. We're going after them. Let's go. But if everything the lady said was true, then the days did not match up. Counting backwards from the day Duke Northruth arrived in Ilstra's royal castle, this meant that on the day he left Northruth for Ilstra, Charlotte's party would have not yet reached Northruth. The only possible thing to happen between the two parties was to miss each other on the road. This makes Her Highness's third hypothesis no longer plausible, concluded Duke. They initially considered the possibility that the man Charlotte ran away with was connected to Duke Northruth in some way. However, the days, based on calculation, would not be enough for Duke Northruth to hide them. There seems to be something more to this, murmured Duke. Aside from searching for the bride, they would also have to search for Duke Northruth's true plans.